Very good.
So we'll go
Right,
ahead and call
welcome.
the meeting to order. We have 6 members present.
Yeah. All right. I'd like to call to order the February 6th joint meeting between the Middleton Board of Selectmen and the Middleton Finance Committee for a discussion on the operating budget fiscal year 22. Mr. Sheehan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining us today as we kick off the start of the fiscal year 22 budget cycle on the operating side, omnibus operating budget. I will introduce Taylor Galusha before we get started. Taylor is on the call today. She is for the Finance Committee members. You probably haven't met her yet. She is a graduate fellow from Merrimack College, and she's been with us since September. Will be with us through April or May. So doing a variety of different things. So trying to groom the next group of government workers. So getting right into the budget document or the budget, we're using the ClearGov budgeting tool again this year that we started last year. It saves Sarah a lot of time. I think it saves the department's time in submitting their stuff, and it saves us a lot of time that we don't have to print 16 binders and 300 or 400 pages a piece. So we appreciate that that use of the technology and the members' willingness to go along with that. You'll also notice in the budget summary that we distributed the other day, Sarah has developed the budget in the GFOA, the Government Finance Officers Association format. We are planning to submit to GFOA later in the year in hopes of getting their Excellence Award, Excellence in Budgeting Award. So this has been something that Sarah started early on in COVID and has been entirely her work. So we appreciate the work that she's put into that. It is not a small undertaking whatsoever. So I don't know if there's anybody on from the public, but I'm going to assume that there is, or pretend that there is, and assume that people may watch this later on. This is the first of 2 all-day budget meetings that we do, the first being today for the operating or the omnibus budget, and then a month from today, 4 weeks from today on March 6th, we'll be back here again for the capital budget for fiscal year 22, as well as a sort of recap or circling back on the operating budget. Usually by the time we get to the March meeting, we have a lot of the holes in the budget filled in, or a lot of the questions answered. So we then have a budget hearing, a formal budget hearing on March 25th. That's in concert with the reading of the town meeting warrant. And then for the last few years, or most of the years, I guess, that I've been here, we've needed a 4th meeting, joint meeting, to tie up loose ends. And so we've penciled in April 8th for that. I would guess that we will need that this year. Still a long way to go, but there's no question there's a lot of uncertainty this year, and we'll talk about that as we go through. In terms of where we are right now, we're often in a deficit when we have this first meeting, and this year is no exception. The picture is grimmer than normal for lots of obvious reasons, and some that may not be as obvious. The schools came in lower than they typically do this year, and so usually when we're here, we're looking at school budgets that might be 6 or 8%, and we know that there's going to be some squeeze that takes place that will get them down to a lower increase. We cannot really count on that happening to the same extent this year that it happened in the past. So schools came in with very reasonable, responsible budgets, and we're really appreciative of that. And the downside is that we don't have that future benefit to look forward to as we go through. So obviously with COVID, there's no shortage of uncertainty and unusualness. And so we don't have to talk about that in great detail. We'll talk about it as we go through, as we talk about revenues and expenditures and things. The big, a lot of unknowns, and the biggest, I think, is what is the speed and breadth of the economic recovery as we come out of COVID. There's certainly reason for optimism with the vaccines being developed, and that hopefully we'll get people back working and shopping and eating out and all of that stuff that we rely on, economic drivers that we rely on. But it's a very deep hole that we're starting from. So there are certainly opportunities that the crisis presents to us. There are always opportunities that crises provide. We had no reason to believe that we could transition to remote work when a year ago, before this started. I was frankly amazed at how well it went, and so that's one opportunity. Obviously there's a big opportunity that presents itself in this time period, and that is low interest rates. And we'll talk about that as we talk about the facilities project. We'll talk about that, I think, a little bit later on today, and more significantly next month when we meet again and talk about the capital budget. So I'm going to have Sarah start with some background, looking at the fiscal 21 second quarter report. Give us a sense of where we are halfway through the fiscal year. She'll then walk us through the multi-year projection and the so-called traditional model, the green model, and that'll give a sense of where we're starting from and where we need to get to. And then after Sarah finishes up, I'll talk a little bit more about the economic outlook, or the fiscal outlook, the day ahead, and what we can expect to happen over the coming months as we get closer to town meeting in May. So Sarah, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thanks, Andy. So I'm obviously not going to read through my entire report, but some highlights. Overall, spending is where it should be. We're at 51% of the budget. We like to be around 50%. We're a little bit higher because there's a lot more one-time expenses, or just the timing of some expenditures this year brought them into December versus January that we see for a couple of things. Actually, let me move down to my revenue now. Revenues are also, we're at 50% of the budget, which honestly is great. It helps us, know that the reductions that we did last year were accurate. They were necessary, because while, we are trending with our current budget, we're still overall down from last year. We're not down nearly as much as overall as much as I thought we would be. We're only down about 4% revenue wise in local receipts compared to last year, which translates to about $55,000. It's really good considering a lot of our categories for revenues are down over 80% from last year. The offset is kind of our motor vehicle is doing well. Fees are doing really well. We're up almost 95% over last year due to timing. And we increased a couple of fees and created some new fees as well with recycling and bulk stickers. And also our licenses and permits are up 13% over last year. So those kind of help to offset the downfalls that we've seen, particularly with rooms and meals compared to December 31st of last year. Right now, revenues do not meet our expenditures, which is not alarming, primarily because with expenditures, there's about $400,000 that we transfer over to MELD for their share of retirement and liability and workers' comp insurance that happens in March. So that will help offset the, I won't say deficit, the shortfall that we're seeing revenue versus expenditure wise. And that's kind of my summary for so far this year. Any questions from anybody?
Sarah, how far up to date are we with DOR on meals and rooms tax? I know there's usually a lag. Are we?
As far as I know, we're up to date.
We are, okay.
We don't, yeah, I mean, they don't tell us if there's companies that haven't paid or things of that nature.
Yeah, I was just wondering during the period when, you know, the businesses didn't have to immediately pay their meals tax, if we were still.
I don't think so. No,
coming
that's
into
why
that
there's
time.
this decrease here. We didn't get anything in rooms in quarter 1. It all came in quarter 2.
Yeah, but I was wondering, meals tax is,
2.
yeah, because meals tax is almost identical. That's why I was asking.
Yeah. But rooms are actually almost identical as well. If I break out the 2 payments that we received, it's about just under 10 grand for each payment, or just over 10 grand, I mean, for each payment. So
Okay.
we're clearly not going to make the $60,000 mark that DOR imposed on us for rooms excise. I think we're trending closer to 35 or 40,000. But hopefully meals are trending a little bit better. So, which I'm kind of still surprised at. So hopefully things will at least stay stable to keep getting similar revenues each quarter. But obviously, as we go through the budget process, we'll keep an eye on how things trend with quarter 3, which is typically our best quarter for both of those 2 categories because of the holidays. But we'll see, since there was new restrictions imposed around the same time, we'll see how that actually impacted everything.
Okay. Thank you.
Is the state's use of the DoubleTree as a vaccination site gonna trickle any revenue to us?
I don't know. People could stay in the hotel the night before their appointment if there's a snowstorm. So there might be some money that comes in from that. But I don't know if they're going to tax the state on using the facility. I don't know. But it would be, I mean, that would be good if we did get something from it.
Yeah, it's being run, Costa, by a private entity. So
Sure it is.
I'm guessing that they would be subject to taxation.
Yeah.
And they may have some people staying there. Hard to predict what the impact of that'll be.
Yeah,
Okay.
and we honestly wouldn't even see that till potentially the end of quarter 3, quarter 4, depending on how long it goes on for. So,
Let's hope a lot of people are staying in a lot of room service.
yeah.
Mhm.
Did you say, Sarah, that DOR imposed a number on us?
They
Maybe I
did. For rooms, they did not allow any community to go to above $60,000. We originally had $140,000 budgeted. So we reduced it when we were putting together our tax rate. That's when we were informed that our amount got rejected, basically. So we did a few things. We moved back up motor vehicle excise. We originally had it at 1975. I think we raised it back up to the 1985. And then that's why you see here, there's a miscellaneous non-recurring number here. I used some one-time revenue that we received in FY21 so far this year to help reduce the tax rate as well because of that. So we did some creative things to keep the tax rate down based on the restriction imposed.
Are we hearing that DOR may do something similar on room excise again? I mean, I think it's going to take a while until that
I
comes
think
back.
so. That's why when we get into the projections, I'm keeping the number at 60,000. I'm not
Okay.
increasing it, hoping that people come back and stay at hotel rooms. We're keeping it the same just in case, because I wouldn't be surprised if there was another restriction put in place as far as the rates go when we're setting the tax rate.
Excuse me. Thank you.
You're welcome. Andy, do you want me to go into the projections now?
Yeah, please.
Okay, let me just get what page they're on. Bear with me. The only unfortunate thing when I converted this to a PDF is that it did not create bookmarks for me. So I am just gonna try to find the right page. Too far. Okay, so going in, everything is kind of our standard as far as property taxes go. The only difference that you'll see is the debt exclusion number is up in anticipation of the municipal complex passing. So this is reflective of what the increase in the exemption would be. The state aid is so far the governor's number. I will say it looks like it's going down, but it is not. The revenue number in here is the numbers that we raised on the tax recap, which actually changed a week after we set the tax rate. They weren't finalized when we set the tax rate, but we have to go off the numbers that we have based on DOR regulations. So the number, the total that we actually did receive this year is 2044, and it is going up to 2055. So it is increasing. Our assessments went up more, which is why it looks like it's going down from what's currently in here. And you'll see we're keeping rooms excise the same at 60,000. Meals, I'm also decreasing another $30,000 just because I'm not sure how things are going to pan out with the current restrictions that were in place. And we're not sure how everything is going to come back. This, of course, is a place that we can revisit if need be to close some of the gap in our budget. Everything else we're keeping level funded except for investment income. We are not on trend to meet the 70,000, so I've reduced it a little further.
Yeah, I noticed, Sarah, that was down considerably,
yes,
obviously.
that's down, yeah, that's actually down, I think 85% versus this time last year. We had over 55,000 last year in an investment income, and we have just over 20 grand, I think.
I think it's like 15, 17.
Yeah.
So, okay.
So that is way down. So hopefully, you know, we have money in MMDT. We have money a little bit at Bartholomew that is invested, but everything else is just, you know, in our depository account. So the most income that we do receive from that is from MMDT. We used to, last year, we were getting $4,000 or $5,000 a month on the money we have with them, and it's down to about $500 a month that we receive. So that is the main source of the reduction that we're seeing currently.
On the meals tax, Andy, have we heard anything about the 99's construction timing?
Nothing recently, Costa. The last we heard was that they were putting all of their projects on hold. And I think, you know, with being in the dead of winter now, it's not surprising. I would guess that, and this is only a guess, but I think once the weather breaks, once we get to maybe March, I would guess that they would start up again.
You know, I was driving by, you know, the new Maggie's farm yesterday about 5 o'clock. Their parking lot was packed.
Yes, they're apparently doing quite well, which is nice to see.
So like I said, that's definitely a category that we can always come back to and revisit. But I'm trying to be as conservative as possible with this at this point in time, at least.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think we should probably take a better look in March and then again in April and come up with a better revenue consensus amongst us. But yep. I'm tracking with what you're doing. Makes sense.
And then our offset receipts, not much is changing there. We have not heard anything from Meld, so this is really just a placeholder. It could go down, it could go up. PEG is only changing slightly, and then our enterprise fund indirect costs are, it's the second full year of the water enterprise fund, so we have more accurate numbers that we're going off of with that.
Sarah, could you remind me again on excise meals? Pre-COVID, what was our fiscal year 2019 or 2020 revenue?
Roughly 200,000.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And then getting into the expenditure side here, debt service again increasing with the anticipation of the municipal complex project. Retirement, health insurance, and unclassified. This is where we're taking kind of a big hit this year. Health insurance, we are estimating a 10% increase. We know it's not going to be 10%. So we will see some savings within that. Property and liability, I am budgeting a 17% increase in that. Our rewards programs are not, that we usually get about $15,000 to $20,000 worth of savings, are not in place because of the pandemic. So I'm anticipating that we will not have that typical savings that we see. Our claims are also up as well within those categories. So we may be able to adjust it slightly, but that seems to be kind of where we're trending so far this year, especially with, you know, more vehicles that we add on, newer vehicle replacements have higher premiums as well. And then retirement, our retirement assessment increase is 12.2%. This is primarily due to our 2019 number being lower than it really should have been. Our police retro was not processed yet when all the numbers went into place for our FY21 assessment, which is based on calendar year 2019. So that kind of, we saw much less of an increase last fiscal year than we really should have, which is just kind of making it seem like it's a much bigger increase this year. And as we get into more of the detail, I'll bring up ClearGov and you can see what the differences are for each of these categories. Elementary schools right now are trending at 2%. Masco right now, we're trending at 3.2%. And Essex Tech, since we've gone to print, we've actually received Essex Tech's updated numbers and assessments. We had 2 additional students in from the previous year. So we are actually trending at a 16% increase in Essex Tech's assessment. So when I go into ClearGov, you'll see it looks a little bit different than some of the numbers here, primarily relating to, or only relating to Essex Tech. And then going into our 3-year projection, while we are showing kind of a deficit in each year, it's kind of a stable deficit. It's not, you know, we're not having those big fluctuations that sometimes we see when we put this together. So I think that's relatively promising as it comes into that. Again, revenues are extremely conservative as we're looking at these. I've kept, and I apologize if this didn't transfer over so well. You know, in this, we're keeping rooms the same. Obviously, that's not going to happen. We're hoping that they come back. It's just a matter of how quickly does it come back. And that is kind of an unknown. Meals, we are trending upwards in anticipation, but hopefully we get back to our FY19, FY20 numbers sooner than I'm projecting out here. And as far as expenditures go, everything is basically trending. The only change that we're trending is COLAs, which, you know, we're doing a 1% this year. The projection is going back to a 2% COLA in 23, a 2% in 24, and a 2.5% in 25. Again, these are all just assumptions that we typically do. And we'll just have to see how it all plays out in real life as we go through with that.
What are the, excuse me, what are the increases that you're projecting on the regional schools?
5% for each regional school, which is the standard that we typically do.
Yeah, the only struggle I think we're going to have more of is how Essex Tech surges up, surges down, surges up.
And I mean, that's how it's been every,
Yeah.
I mean, we were at, you know, 780,000 last year, 680 this year, and now we're back up to 890,000. So it's just a little roller coaster that happens with Essex Tech. And it doesn't take much to throw it off. We're only talking 2 students that's throwing it off so significantly for this year. So again, you know, as much as I love the projection, I think it's great to see how we're trending. It's not a crystal ball. It's never set in stone. It changes constantly. And there's too many different variables that go into it. So that's why I prefer to kind of just look at our one pager and see snapshot how we're doing for this year as it is.
And that includes debt service of facility.
Yes. Yep. I will say There are a few other things that have come up since this has gone to print that will change a lot of these numbers that I'm sure Andy will talk to next, where we have a lot of unknowns, but I will stop my part of this here so that we can stay on track for the meeting. Andy, do you want me to share anything for your recap part, or?
No, I don't think so at this point.
Oh, did you want me to go into the budget? I mean, the actual report and how it's changed?
Oh, yeah, that would be helpful.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you.
So obviously you can see a completely different format from what we've seen before. I was hoping that when I did the table of contents, things would link a little bit better for the PDF. Unfortunately, it does not. So I'll just kind of go through the table of contents here and explain kind of the different sections. Again, most of these are set by the GFOA of what you need to have in there for people to understand your budget process. So we've got the Citizens Guide to the Budget Process that talks about Middleton specifically, our calendar. The Guide to the Budget is kind of a section that talks a little bit more in detail of the different components of the budget. Then we now have an org chart in there, a list of all of our boards and committees and how they come to be, and a short community profile that gives a little bit more background into the town of Middleton. And then we kind of go into, as where I just kind of was, Andy's budget message that he has gone over already, our operating projections, my budget summary, as well as a summary of how we balance revenues and expenditures. And then it goes into all the departmental budgets, which actually I will go to Andy's budget to kind of show you how that's kind of changed. Nope, that's my budget. Departmental 52. Sorry, bear with me. So this, again, this is going to look pretty similar to what you've seen in the past. Actually, we've always have the narrative part that each department puts together, all their goals for the coming year, what they've accomplished in the past year, and then now in here is just, instead of those detail pages that are long and really in depth, just kind of a breakdown of all the different accounts that each department has and what the summaries are. As well as a departmental org chart and an FTE percentage by position, which is new this year. And then at the end, after all of the different departmental budgets, then there's a little bit of supplemental information that has the full Middleton Elementary School budget, Masco, what they've presented so far. I think it's just a PowerPoint slide in there for now. Some of our debt schedules, more employee count information, and then a little summary of budget terms and definitions, as well as our financial policies. So there's a lot of information in there. This is the format I'm going to continue with for our capital budget. There'll be a section in between these two that'll say capital budget, and that's where everyone will just go to see. And then all of the tables and charts that are currently in here will just get updated each time that we meet. So it'll be the same format, the same report, just a little bit longer each time we look at it. So this is a lot more streamlined. This is all one document versus before we would have Excel files, we'd have Word documents, PDFs that would all have to come together at the end, page number everything, and really spend a lot of hours trying to put together the binder. But now this is all just one document. So as soon as it's done, just converting it to a PDF. All the tables and charts are linked in here. So as long as I update the correct tables and charts in Excel, these all get updated right away. So it's really streamlining the process compared to what used to be. So it's been as much of a beast as it was to put together. It's been really helpful during this process just to have everything in one place and make it a little bit easier for me and I know for Andy as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You done?
Yes.
I don't want to interrupt. Okay. Thanks so
Okay,
much.
thank you.
Okay, good. Yeah.
Thanks,
no,
Sarah.
thank you. Yeah.
So,
excellent.
yeah, so this is a really great document to have. And as Sarah mentioned, it was a beast for her. Hopefully in the long run, it saves her time. It certainly saves us time upstairs where we would spend, often you wouldn't get the budget books until the day of the meeting, or maybe a day or two in advance, and would spend a day or so compiling everything into 3-ring binders. So certainly streamlines for us. In terms of where we are, as Sarah pointed out, the coming year is going to be a challenge. Lots of uncertainty with the next few. If you think back to 5 years ago, we were looking at a Proposition 2.5 override in the winter, spring of 2016, and that was successful. That went into effect for fiscal year 17. The way we structured that at the time, or the strategy that we employed at the time, was that it would get us a few years, and really we were thinking maybe 3 years, and it has gotten us 5. It'll get us a 6th in fiscal year 22, and we'll see what happens after that. But we've made a lot of changes for the positive. The policies that the board and the finance committee adopted a couple of years ago have certainly helped us to stabilize things and give us better guardrails for the way that we manage our finances. And I think that has gone a long way in stretching out the benefits of that Prop 2.5 override from 5 years ago. So as Sarah mentioned, the projections are helpful, but they always have to be taken with a grain of salt. And I think I used this analogy last year, that the projection is kind of like the weather report. The meteorologist can give you a pretty good sense of what tomorrow's forecast is going to be, or tomorrow's weather is going to be. Each successive day gets a little less clear, and I think that's kind of the way. It's certainly the way that I look at the financial forecast. Is we have a pretty good sense of what is coming in 22. The forecast for 23, 24 is more difficult. So, we make, as Sarah said, certain assumptions and projections that go into that, all informed by our experience and our knowledge, and that's both on the expenditure side and on the revenue side. We talked quite a bit about the excise taxes, motor vehicle, meals and lodging, and I won't go into those again. We talked a little bit about local aid. We're frankly overjoyed with what the governor has put forth for local aid. Very surprising. We were very surprised in fiscal year 21, and we were cynical about it, or I was cynical about it. And I said, well, it's an election year, so they're not going to cut local aid during an election year and put their jobs on the line. We didn't expect an increase in fiscal 22. We were expecting a drop. So we'll take that. That's good news as far as the revenue side of things go. A couple of things couple of expenditure things that I'll point out. Sarah mentioned retirement and schools. Couple that have changed in 22 elections. As you'll recall, for last year went up quite a bit because of the presidential primary and presidential election. That's a once every 4-year phenomenon. So we have to spike that up in advance of election years. That drops back down. I think that's dropping about 35% for fiscal year 22. So again, kind of that normal up and down cycle with presidential elections. The transfer station, as the board knows, and I think we talked about it with the finance committee in the past as well, our tipping fees went up about 20. Well, they went up 20% in fiscal year 22, or they're going up 20%. So So we had to adjust that budget accordingly, and Paul will talk about that when he comes in. So Sarah mentioned health insurance, and we will get good news. We'll get better news on that. We're still carrying at 10%, and we think that that's going to come down to below 7, and maybe even lower than that. And hopefully we'll have that by the time we get to the March 6th meeting, 4 weeks from today. In terms of getting back again to the policies, the policies have been really helpful in getting us in a sort of straight line and not deviating from one year to the next. It's made things a little bit more challenging in several respects because, for instance, free cash we used to use as a funding source at this time of year to balance the budget. We've eliminated that practice, and that's been depending on the year, that was several $100,000, and so we've had to make that up somewhere else. Obviously, the meals excise helped for a couple of years. It's helping us less this year, but some other things that we did have offset that. I do not, we've got a lot of uncertainty with this coming year. I will not advise using free cash to supplement the budget if we're, a month from now or a month and a half from now, if we're staring at a deficit. I think there are better ways to do that on the revenue side of things if we are in that position. We've got excess levy capacity that we've carried for times like this. We've got stabilization that we've been building for periods like this. Stabilization is often referred to as the rainy day fund, and arguably it has been raining pretty hard for the last 10 months. So, that may be something we have to look at. I'm not saying that it is. I'm just sort of throwing it out there as the one of the options that we may need to look at before we get to town meeting. Circling back to free cash a little bit, one thing that I mentioned, I believe, to the board and may have mentioned to Finance Committee as well, if we're in a strong enough position in the fall, if we have a town meeting in the fall and we're in a strong enough position, i.e. free cash closes out well, that would be an opportunity for us to use some free cash as tax relief, not as a funding source for the operating budget, which it would be if we were using it at this time, but as relief on the tax rate before we set the rate. And so that's something, again, just kind of putting it out there as a placeholder for what we may want to do 6 months from now. There's a lot that's going to happen between now and then. I know we're right at 9:15, so I'll wrap up quickly. Just a couple of things I want to talk about before we get into the department budgets. The pay equity plan, I spoke with the board about that recently. 2 years ago at this meeting, the clear direction that we were given was to do a compensation and classification study, because every year at these meetings we were faced with requests for pay adjustments and reclassifications and things like that. So we worked on that. We were ready to implement that a year ago, and obviously COVID happened, and that kind of put that on the back burner. We're finalizing that classification and compensation plan. We'll be bringing that to the Board of Selectmen for their approval in the coming weeks, and then our plan would be to make those adjustments during fiscal 21, unless there are compelling reasons to hold off. So that's something that's coming in the future, that we owe the employees that, but we also owe that to the taxpayers in order to avoid a potential or a real liability that we've got out there because of questionable questions about the equity of our pay. And then finally, town meeting obviously is still several months away. We've got about 30 articles on the warrant right now. There's probably going to be a short special within the annual. And, we've got the usual finance articles, we've got some bylaws, and we've got the facilities project. Sarah mentioned that earlier. And that's, $61 million, not a small ask, likely to attract interest and draw a crowd. And so that raises the question that, if we're still in COVID and we're likely to still be in COVID, how do we do that? If we have to accommodate 600 or 1,000 people, how do we have a town meeting when we can't really have it in the schools during this period of time? So I've been talking with the moderator, Barbara Pacelli, about venue and day of the week. Maybe it's not a Tuesday evening, the board is, we have that on the agenda for Tuesday to talk about as well. So there's no action needed this time. We've got time to work through it. But if we change venues and we were to go to something like an outdoor meeting, there's a lot of logistical challenges with that. And so we need to be on top of that. So, so I'll stop now. We'll go into the department budgets, and we've got Masco first, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Rick, you're muted.
No. Good. You didn't hear any of that. No, thank you very much, Andy. And I see the faces are here to welcome Middleton Masconomet Regional School Budget Superintendent Michael Harvey, Jeff Sands, Tasha Cooper. You guys can take it away.
Hi, guys.
Hello.
I have the presentation from January 20th in our budget book. Would you like me to pull that up at all, or would you like to just speak?
I have an updated one that
Okay.
as long as I can share. So I'll go with that, but I'll.
You should be able to.
Tasha, you want to kick this off? We
Sure.
didn't rehearse, so.
We did not rehearse this, and it's early on Saturday morning. Or
Tough
early
being
for
the
me.
opening act. Yeah.
I just so hello everybody. As you know, obviously this year is really special, and our superintendent Mike and Jeff Sands, our assistant superintendent, worked hard to make a fiscally responsible or present a fiscally responsible budget to the school committee, which involved a lot of cuts in it to staff. I'm just going right for the guts here. I'm not sure that we're supporting it yet. So I think that they did a really good job seeing what could be done in this kind of a year so that we're, not draining the towns more than COVID already has, and everything I know every other department is going to be. But we've made a level funded, but I don't believe it is 100% level funded. So I don't know that that's a really good introduction. And I'm kind of at a loss of words until I hear the whole thing again, because you might as well just see the show and then we can talk about it afterwards.
All right.
Thank you.
So Mike will take it away with the show.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, so this is sort of a combination of our two presentations. Full screen. From the 20th of January, and then again this past Wednesday. And I'll point out where some of those changes were. So this flow chart here shows our general budget process or development process. So we start back in October with having our excess and deficiency numbers certified, preparing our SIMS report for student enrollments.
Mike, the flow chart isn't on. Sorry to interrupt.
Not on?
It's just the opening page.
Oh, it didn't change. What's going on? You see it now?
Nope.
All right, hold on. Let's try that again.
Here we go.
There you go.
Got it there? Does it
Yep.
change when I? Hold on.
It's stuck on that right now.
Yeah, that's weird. Hold on a minute. Let's try something else. It will not. See, does it?
There you go.
Right. That changed? Okay.
Yep.
All right. All right. So we'll have to do it this way. A little harder to see, but hopefully we can squint. I have to put my glasses on maybe. So as I said, as I was talking about this in November, we submit our SIMS October 1 report to DESI. We communicate our final October 1 numbers to the towns. And then we start our internal budget process with our department heads and budget holders. During December, we finalized the internal budget tools. We developed discretionary spend budgets by our departments. We put our staffing plans together. We also look at our special education budget, our athletics budget, and then finally put together a fixed and variable cost budget by major expense category. And we have meetings with our budget subcommittees. In January, we do our finalization work. And this year on January 20th, I presented the superintendent's recommended budget to the school committee. Again, we have budget subcommittee meetings, and we start our formal school committee budget review process, which is where we are now in February. As I said, last Wednesday, we had our real first dive into the numbers, and then we won't be meeting again. I think it's still the 24th. It's that last Wednesday in February because of February vacation week. On the 17th, we'll send you a tentative operating budget, which is where we are at that point in time. It'll probably be very close to this, but as Tasha said, I think our process is a deliberative one. So we're going to talk about this and go through this. And ultimately, when we get into that yellow box in March, school committee is going to hold, I think we have on the books 4 meetings during that first 2 weeks in March to really kind of, finalize this information. 2 of those meetings will be public hearings. And at that public hearing on March 10th, the school committee will adopt its final budget that we will then share with the towns, and hold meetings such as this with town officials. And finally, that goes on. The budget is certified in April to the towns by our district treasurer. And then we're ready for town meetings, hopefully in May. All right, come on. There we go. So as we develop our budget, we start with what we call level service. And so that's just the question of what will it take to maintain the current levels of programs and staffing in the district. For when we did our level service budget this year, it turned out to be about just under $1.5 million. We'll get into some of the reasons why. There's one major area that's kind of driving that change. So when we looked at this and tried to put together something that was a little more fiscally responsible, the leadership team looked at how could we reduce that $1.5 million for level service to something a little less than that. And so we came up with a reduced level service budget of just under $1 million of $973,857, or a 2.7% increase in our total operating expenses. Which results into an increase of $824,513, or 2.9% in an increase in our operating assessment versus FY21. So when we look at our budget and how we go through this and make those developments, these are the assumptions that we're making in this budget. First off is salary. We're looking at contractual salary increases that we already have for settled contracts. We also have 2 contracts that will be open going into July right now. That's our teacher's contract, which is our largest, and our professional paraprofessionals contract. So those who, we're negotiating with the teachers now. Paraprofessionals will start probably a little bit after we finish with the teachers. And so we have a placeholder for salary increases for the teachers and paras in our budget assumption. Then we have all the other contractual salary obligations, such as steps and degree changes. We incorporate any anticipated savings based on known retirements that we have. We include a proposal to further reduce our staff by 7.6 full-time equivalents. We level fund all our grants as opposed to the FY21 budget. In operating costs, we have no new services or programs. Again, we're level funding all of our grant and expectations. We incorporate all of our level service discretionary expense requests from principals, department heads, and our operational unit directors. We incorporate contractual service contract increases. So for example, our transportation contract is just recently settled. For this year is the first year of that contract, and also for a janitorial, it's the first year for that contract. So we have increases that are contractually obligated in those. We have the increase for the appropriation for our Essex Regional Retirement Assessment. Again, just like the towns get, we're a member of the Essex Retirement Board. We get the annual bill, and we don't get to really argue that one. We include all of our known out-of-district placement tuitions and related transportation costs. We include other special education expense increases based on what we know for student needs. And then we have a healthcare and dental insurance placeholder of 2.5%. That's from our consultations with our representative from Maya. So when we look at sort of our expenditures versus funding sources sheet here, we're proposing a total general operating expense budget before offsets of $38,644,833, which is a change of 1.108518, or a 3% increase over FY21. We have expense offsets. This is things like special ed circuit breaker, and other fees that we would use to balance against our operating expenses of $1.8 million, which leaves us with generating general operating expenses after offsets of $36,834,842, which is an increase of $973,857, or 2.7%. Debt service, we include in all that, but we know it's a separate line item as opposed to our operating budget. For state aid, we're budgeting basically flat to what we've received for this year. In Chapter 70, transportation, we're taking these numbers right off of the preliminary FY22 cherry sheets that have come out. We're looking at a decrease in our transportation reimbursement right now. Debt service is going to stay the same, and charter school tuition reimbursement will increase slightly. So for all of those, those are the major ones. And I'm trying to see, excess and deficiency is also in there at a $361,567. That's increasing. We have a targeted goal to hold 4% in reserve in our excess and deficiency, and so the 361,000 represents what we have in excess of that 4% number. So when we kind of get down to those total funding sources, we're looking at a 8.391, just short of $8.4 million in funding sources, which is an increase of about $150,000. So we subtract our funding sources from our total expenditures. So you get down to that bottom section, and that's, you see our total net assessment that includes debt of just over 30 million, or $30,025,724, which is an increase of $819,262, or 2.8% overall. And as you see that bottom line, two lines break it out versus operating versus debt. So when we take that and plug it into the formula that we use to create assessments by towns, we look in that middle section, we see Middleton's assessment based on this budget and using the FY22 preliminary cherry sheets. This budget would result in an increase to Middleton's operating assessment of $302,313 or 3%. Some of the things that we're looking at, the pieces that we're trying to be sensitive to here in that Topsfield's operating assessment, part of a big piece of this, how this formula works, is by enrollment. And what we're seeing is that Topsfield's enrollment is growing relative to the other two towns. Boxford is actually shrinking a little bit. Middleton's is staying relatively consistent. And so just by that, just by using the formula, you can see Topsfield is looking at an 8.7% increase year over year. And that's, as I said, largely based on the fact that their enrollment is becoming a greater proportion of our total. And Boxford is decreasing a little bit. So this kind of breaks this down, breaks down our budget into the major operating expense categories. We can see salaries is the biggest, just under 60% of our total, 58% for FY22. With those reductions that we were talking about in staffing, we're holding the increase in the salary line to about $112,000. The next category down, that next circled section, is out of district tuition. And that's a pretty substantial amount. And that, when compared, if you go down to the next circled category, which is transportation for special education, that's the increase that we're talking about. As I said, the whole thing overall is $1.5 million, and there's just over $500,000 of it right there in those two categories of out-of-district tuition and special ed transportation. What we're seeing is our transportation costs for students with severe special needs is more than doubled per run. And we're also expecting 10 out-of-district placements to join us in 7th grade next year, coming up through the elementary systems. So I don't want to throw Scott Morrison under the bus, but I should ask him what he's going to do with all the extra cash. Because that's, it's the way it works. I mean, that's the way we always do this. These are students who have been out of district pretty much for their entire time in the elementary schools. And when they roll into 7th grade, that comes into our responsibilities to pay for. So, that's pretty much the strain that we're looking at. And as I said, and the transportation costs is pretty shocking when you look at it. It's almost doubling the line in and of itself.
Like, from what I've heard, those kids were coming from Middleton schools. So,
are you serious?
Yeah, I talked with one of their school committee yesterday.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, I haven't got, and I won't do that. I won't go down and break down what towns they're from. But
I don't know if all 10, but I think.
Yeah, but there's 10.
They'll be,
I mean,
they're happy with their budget. It's fairly easy, and this is
Right.
probably why.
Right, and that's, it's making ours challenging, quite honestly. That's what the, the issue is. You're looking at, there's this, just about 600,000 of the $1.5 million projected for level service is, as I said, those two lines in our cost centers. We also have $41,000 there on student services. That was, again, special education costs. That one was circled. I got to say, this came from the February 3rd, and these were the ones that we really dug into on the February 3rd meeting. So those are sort of those big items that we're looking at there. Switch on to the next one. So in order to try and make this budget somewhat affordable, we looked at our staffing models here. What we've known is that in the past, due to enrollment decreases, we've done some restructuring of the staffing levels at the high school. That happened, I think, in FY17, and to the tune of about 9 positions. We want to make sure we look at this last year after. So last year, the great story is, so we voted a budget on March 11th, and we thought it was good, and we were all very happy with it. And then 2 days later, the floor dropped out from under us. And so we had to go back to the drawing board, and we reduced our staffing model last year 11 positions from the year before. So in this budget, as you can see there, it's another, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7.6 positions that we're looking at a reduction of here. This would represent in the middle school 1 full team So it's a math teacher, a science teacher, social studies teacher, an English teacher, and a paraprofessional for that team. In the high school, middle school, there's a shared position between the two buildings, a performing arts teacher position. We look at reducing that. It's a part-time position, or 0.6. And then in the high school, looking at reducing a 1.0 art teacher position and a 1.0 science teacher position. All of those positions, the numbers that we're looking at are net unemployment claims and the district's share of health and dental premiums as well. Reducing those positions would save us $543,163 in the total budget. Some of the other things that we're dealing with, and we have not included these in our budget recommendation, but these are things that we're still wondering what happens. Where will we be in September? We just don't know at this point. But these are considerations that we're keeping on our radar for COVID. Right now, we have 5 part-time workers in the cafeteria doing the cleaning of the desks between each lunch at the cost of $108,000 for the year. We also have 2 full-time day porters that we've added on through our cleaning contract at about $79,000 per year. Last year, and we had, and we will put it up again, we had a 100 by 120 foot tent that we've put up for outside use. One of the things, the band was actually using it for most of the year at $75,000. This year, because we don't know where graduation will be and what we can do in terms of gatherings, we're going to actually wind up putting a much larger tent on the football field and associated chairs and stage and the like. The whole cost of just holding graduation, we're looking at about $40,000. That's going to happen this year in June of 21, but we're keeping it on the list in case, in June of 22, we're not able to hold indoor gatherings. This past fall, we did a full indoor air quality study at a cost of about $40,000. So we want to keep that on the list in case we need to refresh that again. And then extra cleanings for the buildings. These are more large scale deep cleaning costs. At 5 of those we're budgeting at about $17,500. We do daily cleaning on our buses, and our share of that is about $27,000. And then the cost of PPE, cleaning supplies, nursing supplies, and the like at about $50,000. We put a huge amount of signage into our building to direct people around and make hallways one way and close off areas. So we're thinking those signs, we may need to do some refreshing on those at about $25,000. And then we're looking at the cost of testing. We don't even know what those are going to potentially be. The state's got a program that they're offering to local districts at this point. They would offer to pick up the cost of the testing for 6 weeks, but then it would go on to the district's responsibility. I've heard estimates as high as $10,000 a week to conduct large scale testing. So we just don't know. And that's right now we're kind of in a wait and see mode on that because of the high cost. And from what I'm hearing from the health professionals, the relatively limited return that we would get on that information. We also are not assuming any remote accommodations for teachers for FY22, and that's a whole nother piece that if we have teachers who are out on medical leave, what would be the cost of, say, a proctor to cover their class if they were needed to work from home. So these are all things that are not baked into this budget recommendation that we need to make sure we're considering. So to kind of wrap up our calendar, as you see there, we just passed the February 3rd school committee deliberation meeting. We have a budget subcommittee meeting where it's going to meet with the department heads next Wednesday on the 10th. On the 17th is our date to mail the tentative budget to the towns. Right now, it'll probably look like this presentation because we don't have a full school committee meeting between the now and the 17th. But as I said, I would put that in there in very light pencil and keeping an eraser at hand because the school committee is really digging into this, and we're going to have to make some hard choices about what direction we go into. So there, the 24th, the school committee will get back together. And then we have meetings, a special meeting set up for Monday, March 1st, regular school committee meeting on March 3rd, which will also be a public hearing. And then we have a tentative meeting for March 8th. And then again, the March 10th meeting where the school committee will vote its final budget. So it's kind of everything I had in this deck. So open things up for questions.
Sure. Actually, I have a couple. Thanks, Michael. I really appreciate the update on all of this. It was really clear and concise. So actually, something that was later in your item, one of your last slides around the COVID supplies and cleaning. Is there anything budgeted in your current budget now related to COVID supplies, PPP, and cleaning, or is that still outside of your budget?
In our FY21 budget?
FY22.
There's nothing in FY22 for it yet.
Okay, in the current PPP in supplies that you have. So, I mean, I could tell you, I mean, even with vaccine coming, masks are still going to be a process. PPP and all of that is still going to be the process through calendar year 21 and probably for a while into calendar year 22. So I know last calendar year, both Middleton and Boxford had provided some CARES Act dollars. I know Topsfield didn't. Is your expectation that that would be funded again through CARES Act, or are you looking to fund it through your existing budget?
We would look to fund through our existing. I mean, first off, thank you to the town for doing that for us. Thanks for Andy for coming really quickly with that. The good thing is we were actually able to purchase a substantial amount of PPE, more than we actually need right now. So there's a $50,000 placeholder in that last slide that I showed you about things that aren't included. But we also know we're going to have supplies on hand in September. We bought more with that PPE money from both towns than we're actually going to be able to use through the end of this year. So there is a $50,000 number there that we think is what we would need to get us through next year. It's not in the budget per se. It's part of what we're also looking at is, it's just a little over $1 million in our excess and deficiency account. So that's one source of funding that we would, we're holding in reserve in case we need to tap into it. And then I'm still on the wait and see about what happened in Washington yesterday. There was supposed to be a large amount of funding that was supposed to go directly to schools as part of that bill. So we'll see what that looks like. I saw a real rough breakdown last night on it. The unfortunate piece is they've been tying it to most of the funding so far to low income percentages in districts, and we just don't qualify for a lot of that. So I think even the bill that passed at the end of December, I think we're at about we would look due to receive about $100,000, $120,000 out of that. I mean, it's something, but when we're talking about some of the big ticket items, it's not going to go very far. So.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And then one last question. Thank you for that. And I know it's still early in the process, but it doesn't sound like there's a lot of alignment between the administration and maybe the school committee around some of the FTE cuts that you're proposing. So I know that discussion will move through February and March, but should those cuts be restored, what are we looking at possibly at Middleton? What would a 3% increase possibly look like?
So if there were no cuts at all, we kind of ran those scenarios out. Middleton would see an increase of just under 500,000 or 4.8%. The number was 493.9.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Yeah. I'm just trying to get a kind of a snapshot between the two. And I know that I know it's always an iterative process, and
it's hard. I mean, these
like the tide in and out.
These are people's lives. You don't want to lay people off during a pandemic when unemployment's bad enough as it is. But we also want to be responsive to the needs of the towns. We know that.
And I'm assuming some of this is around just enrollment numbers as well. Yeah. And I know there was probably about 3 years ago, there was a kind of a resizing that had happened maybe it was 4 years ago. I can't remember when now. Decision that was made. And one of the things I haven't seen and maybe would be helpful to see is what some of those projections are looking like going forward. I know it's just like a poll, a snapshot in time, it could change. And, you know, and I think we're all waiting to see what post-COVID looks like for maybe students that have moved in a different direction, whether it was a private school, a parochial school, a charter school, homeschooling, and others. But I'm just wondering what we think numbers are looking like in the out years beyond October 2020.
So right there is what you have K to 6 in the elementary schools. So normally from in past years, our class sizes were up over 300.
Yeah.
And so, part of what we're looking at, so, the middle school cut that we're proposing is probably a year earlier than we would be ready to do it from straight enrollment. Right now, there's 267 students in 8th grade who will be moving into the high school. And I think it's about 314 in the 7th grade right now. So, enrollment wise, the middle school is going to be exactly where it is, the projection next year as it is this year. 2 years from now, we're going to be looking at, 267 and 271 in the middle school, which the school is built on this, a model of 3 teams per grade at about 300 students per grade. So you have 100 students per team. It gets this really tricky, thing that you're dealing with when you don't have that neat 100 students per team model. So how do you run this as 2.5 teams per grade, where you have a swing team that goes, that has mixed and 7th and 8th graders on it. It just doesn't fit neatly into that nice cookie cutter, 100 students per team, 5 sections per team at 20 students in a class. It just doesn't work that way when you're looking at numbers that are 250 to 270. So
I would just add to what Mike said. As the school committee perspective, there was a lot of questioning about doing this in a year and not now. Not only because of the numbers, which would be higher, obviously, because we still have that bigger class with us, but also because we don't know what what to expect when kids come back in September after being hoping that they're coming back to a more traditional classroom setting and being out of a traditional classroom setting for, a year and a quarter.
Right.
We don't feel like every kid that's coming back is going to need more help. So we didn't feel like the questioning that was going on Wednesday demonstrated many members, I would say most, did not feel that this was the time really to do this kind of a cut, especially in the middle school. The high school, while sad to remove any teachers, it's not. It's more of a leveling out thing. It's not removing this much support to middle schoolers.
Right.
So
I think to Tasha's point, I mean, we're talking about what are the traumatic experiences that we're going to have to remediate with students over the impact of basically 2 years. So
this is I'll call it un-PC comment, but I don't mean it that way. We have what I'll call a stupid cost of transportation at almost $500,000, but the cost to keep no cuts in staff is also what our increases in special ed. And when that comes from 10 kids, it's really hard to make the choice to educate 10 kids over all our kids. 10 kids we don't have a choice on, and we don't want to. We think that's the, it's the right thing to do, and we're required to do it. So I'm not saying not to do what we have to do, but I'm saying that I don't want to affect all kids because of that. And we're just going to have to make room for that $500,000 in special ed, unfortunately. And something really needs to be done about this with the transportation. I mean, Patty, our assistant superintendent of student services, was saying how some of these contracts where they used to be $250 a ride, we're going up to $600 a ride,
Right.
$650, right, Mike?
Yep.
Like how do people get away with that in a year?
Yeah, this isn't just happening in transportation for out of district and special education. I mean, I work in Medicaid, and Medicaid non-emergency medical transportation costs have exploded over the last 3 years. Some of it is driven by the Uber economy, where folks that were doing transportation around special education have actually moved to be Uber and Lyft drivers. Secondly, the cost of reimbursement continues to drop while the cost of transporting has gone up. I mean, we've seen on Medicaid health plans, our costs for transporting members going up between 40 and 45% per year. So it's not just an education, it's because quite honestly, it's an old system of transportation that's trying to move into a new system of Medicaid, education, whatever the case is. This is, and I say this every year, this is yet another reason why for many of these students that would be Medicaid eligible due to disability, this is why I think the Medicaid program needs to stop picking up some of these costs instead of dropping them on the lap of school districts, dropping them on the lap of towns and cities and so forth. But am I to assume that you just completed a transportation contract renegotiation, or are you in your last year of?
No, we did. This is year one.
So it was a perfect storm of all of it. So,
right.
Yeah.
Well, that's for the general ed, the large bus transportation contract. The other ones get bidded out annually. So that's what those numbers that Tasha just quoted are what we're seeing for this year. That are, we're putting these same routes that were, $250 last year, putting them out to bid this year, and the returns are coming back at over 600. So
this
for the same run, same number of kids.
It may not be the forum to discuss this, but has schools looked at what Medicaid programs are doing of actually reimbursing caregivers for transportation rather than relying on a structure that, and many times it may be more effective for the family, and sometimes it can be more financially effective for the
Absolutely. Yes,
okay.
we do. I mean, we enter into those agreements with parents when it makes sense. Okay. But for some of these students, we're talking about serious medical issues where you need a van with a lift and
and a nurse
and a nurse, absolutely. And so, if a parent is able to do that, we do enter into a contract where we reimburse the parent. But for the cases that we're looking at, that's not an option.
Can I just jump in real quick with one COVID related question? Obviously I'm in a school district myself, so I completely understand the costs that you're seeing and the things your needs. The new ESSER 2 grant just came out this week, or the amounts came out last week. And the application actually just was released yesterday. And I just looked up NASPA's amount. It's the 601,000 plus 10,000 for mental health. I just was curious if you're going to use that this year, or if you're planning on it for next year, hopefully to offset some of these costs, or even the year after, because it is a grant.
I think we're just talking about how we're going to use that. I think this year we feel like we're in pretty good shape.
Okay,
so there would be some things that that list of things that I just put up there would be things we want to consider using that second grant for. Right.
Okay, I was just hoping you didn't have to use it all this year.
No, as I said, I think with the support we got from the two towns that we're able to use, give us some of their extra grant money, and then what we have and what we're expecting, I think we're okay for this year.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
I have a question for the superintendent. First of all, thank you for all that you do. I know it's been very difficult. One question is, with all these cuts that we're making, how do you plan on addressing the COVID slide that these kids will be facing once they do come back into the classroom, if we're making all these cuts?
Cuts that we're suggesting, Tony.
What's that?
Right.
Cuts that they are suggesting.
Yeah, it's a suggestion at this point. I think what we're going to have to do is, first off, look at some of the models that we have for summer remediation programs. So unfortunately, we charge for those. So we would be offering, maybe a more robust summer school program. And then when it comes to our actual curriculum, we're going to have to spend some time at the end of this year trying to see where kids are and how far we've gotten. We know, they didn't get the same curriculum, from last March through this June that they would have gotten in a regular full-on in-person school day. So we're going to have to adjust our programming because just, trying to say we're going to accelerate, we can't make more time to do this. So, we're going to have to assess where our kids are at the end of the year, and then revamp our curriculum to pick up where they left off and pull this on. I heard that we had a high school principal candidate come to us this week, and she's a great analogy. Whereas normally we'd have a student move from Spanish 2 to Spanish 3, really what next year is going to be is Spanish 2.5. They're going to be in the next grade, they're going to be in the next course, but we can't expect that they've gotten everything that they should have gotten over the 180 days of this school year. And so we're going to have to meet them where they are and continue from that point. It's using they're all behind, our kids are falling behind, language doesn't really make sense at this point because everybody's in the same boat. Are the kids behind compared to where we would have expected them to be if everybody was in school in person? Yeah, but nobody's been in school in person. So they're really just where they are at this point. So, kind of what we do. We do that anyway every year, but this is just really a bigger piece of doing that.
And Tony, thank you for thanking Mike, because I can't tell you how much work our administration has been doing between him and Jeff and Patty. They've been kicking butt out there and getting their butts kicked in return. And, there's a lot of negativity in this world at this moment. And unfortunately, they get a lot of it. So enough appreciation can't come forward to them in my opinion.
It's been hard for everybody. I mean, I couldn't imagine being in a classroom right now. I just couldn't. It's just, none of us were trained for any of this. As I said, there's no course in superintendent school and how do you do school in a pandemic. So, every day we're coming up with new problems and new questions, and we're making it up as we go along. But as I said, I feel for our teachers. This has been, an incredibly challenging situation for all of them to have to deal with. And, they've done it with the professionalism and, grace is the only word I can think of that really kind of, captures how they've just kind of rolled with it all and said, okay, we're doing this and we're here for the kids.
Well, and also to that point, what was it, our February 24th meeting, when does curriculum, the department heads are coming? To talk
the 10th, next Wednesday.
Okay, the 10th. Part of it is going to be seeing, what they're going to bring forward. There's also been some bonuses with technology and stuff like that. So what they would have done differently, what they want to bring forward. There's a lot of new technology that's done some amazing stuff.
Yeah. The interesting thing, I keep forgetting about is we turned the middle school into a one-to-one technology school and didn't even think about it. I mean, it's, the high school had already, had a bring your own device program in place. And, in the spring, we said, how are we going to deliver on online education to our middle schoolers who don't have a device? And we got every one of them a device, that needed it last year. It was a loaner program. And then this year we just handed them out, using some of those grant funds to buy Chromebooks and things like that. So, we went to a one-to-one middle school program and didn't even think about it. There was no fanfare. There was nothing. It just happened. So.
That you usually would take a year in planning.
Oh, it would take months. Yeah, exactly.
So. Wow, not that many questions this year, Mike.
I was going to say.
Andy's on mute and looks like he's talking.
And so's Rick.
I'm telling Rick that he's muted and I'm muted.
People are texting me, I can't silence my nesting. No, I'm just, sitting here thinking, listening to everybody how, and again, more thanks, I guess, because in a world of negativity we have, and because teaching in schools compensates so much, I think, for some children's, their home life, that it just, like you said, you're not trained for it. And, I give you all the blessings to handle what we have.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank you.
when you look at
Yeah,
that.
and I think a key piece that we're going to have to think about, that we're thinking about now and how we're going to have to plan for is, what are we doing for the social emotional welfare of our kids next year?
Yeah.
There's kids who have, had losses in their families or just the isolation that they've had to deal with.
Yeah.
Their worlds have been turned upside down and they have less control over their
Right.
day-to-day than we do.
Mm.
There's going to be a lot of, as I said, trauma that we're going to have to deal with, in the spring, in the fall.
Right. A lot more dinner table discussion, I'm sure they've heard than they would have heard in other, normal times.
Right.
So yeah, thanks so much. All right. And
Thank you.
so if there are no more questions, thanks. I can't see, I'm only seeing so many tiles, Tasha. So Tanya, I don't know if the next item is ready. I don't see Brad or Debbie. So
Yeah, we got Brad and we've got
I
Jeff.
can't- Okay,
and
cool.
Debbie.
I can't
Right
see
here.
it from where I am there, so if we need to take it out of order, just let me know, whatever.
Mike and Tasha, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Should be fine,
Have a
Rick.
fun afternoon, rest of the morning, whatever we're at.
The sun's out. Anyway. All right. So thanks again. All right. Then we'll move on to welcome Jeff and Brad. And I'm looking for Debbie for the Board of Assessors. Good morning, guys. You're on.
Okay. Did you want to talk about the regular budget first, or what's been the protocol today?
Yeah, I think you can talk about
We-
the regular budget and then talk about the supplemental.
The 22
Brad,
request.
I'm just going to share my screen, Brad, and bring up ClearGov for you. So
Oh, yeah, okay, great. I have that other spreadsheet if I needed it. Yeah, okay.
yep. So here we go, starting with assessors. Sorry. Okay, Brad, the floor is yours.
Okay, so looking at the the budget was just the average increase for the salaries. The everything else was pretty static. The contractual services went up a little bit. Sarah, can I share a document, because I need to kind of look at my notes so it'd be easier for me.
Yep, hold on. I noticed that ClearGov for some reason messed up your budget numbers for salaries anyways, so I will stop sharing. You can
Great.
start sharing yours.
All right, so I should be able to share something. Okay. All right. Sometimes this is easier because it has my notes in here. There's the 1% as mandated. We can get back to this field assessor position. The contractual services for commercial industrial this year, since we're in a certification year, that will be slightly more, but I'm going to put that in on a capital item when we go over the capital budgets. Let's see. Everything else was static there, static there. There was a change with, well, there was a couple of changes, but those are in the IT budget. So this budget's pretty flat. So, except for what we would like. The other thing that I wanted to bring up real quick was the FinCom transfer request for the utility valuation. This is directed to the Finance Committee, but the Selectmen might want to be aware. I don't know if you get a chance to read this request.
Yeah, Finance Board, Andy sent an email out to us about a half hour ago.
Okay. So the bottom line is we're required to do this by the DOR for fiscal 22. We are in the position that I have the information for 21, and we can consult with a company to do this. It'll cost us $4,000, and the potential income back could be around 43,000. There's no hard and fast number. The Department of Revenue is saying the average increase is about 45% over what we normally commit. So it seems like a pretty good way to spend a little money to make a lot of money. So if the finance committee can make a decision on that, that would be great, because I'd like to get that moving as fast as I can.
Finance Board, you want to vote on this or you want some questions?
And Richard, if I could, I'll just weigh in and say that we support this request. Makes sense to bring in this assistance to get the proper valuations. And I apologize for not sending it out sooner.
Look into doing this ourselves, but after talking to a few people in the Department of Revenue, I think it would be a little too complex. And I think the DOR is looking for consistency statewide with a handful of vendors to do it. So the vendor in question was cheaper than another vendor, and I know I'm pretty confident in their ability to do this. So I think it's a good thing.
All right, so I'll entertain a motion from the Finance Board.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Second, or motion made and seconded. We'll do a roll call vote. So George,
Yes.
Michelle,
Yes.
Johnny,
Yeah, I'd say aye.
Jason,
Yes.
Tony, John Mahoney,
Yes.
and I'm in favor. So Andy, what do we do? Is do John and I print this off, sign it, and scan it back to you?
Yes, please. Thank you, Richard.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll get that moving as fast as we can. All right, the big thing that I wanted to bring up was we had our part-time person leave to take a job full-time in Linfield, actually. And I don't know if you got a chance to read my other documentation that I had submitted with this. Anybody?
Yes, that was distributed.
Okay.
Yeah, we got it.
All right, so I thought I'd do is boil this down into a PowerPoint presentation that we can go through why we're requesting that we move the part-time position to full-time and modify it so it's doing far more field work, not just clerical work. So upgrading the part-time position to full-time field assessor, why? Oops, and bear with
And
me
your
here.
screen,
Pardon?
your screen's not up. The PowerPoint's not up. We're
Oh,
still
I'm
on
sorry.
the transfer.
It's up on my screen. Hold on a sec.
Yeah, Mike had the same problem. Sometimes cyberspace has a little glitches.
Why can't I? Are you going to allow screen sharing? Because I'm not seeing it.
Yeah, you're still sharing, Brad. Try stop sharing. I think you might just be sharing the document versus your
Right.
screen.
So stop sharing and then we'll stop sharing the transfer for the utility. And then you should be able to reshare the PowerPoint.
Okay. Oh, new share. Got it. Sorry. All right. Can you see it now?
We got it.
Okay. Sorry about that. I got two screens going this morning so I can read this, and the other thing was up here. Okay. So upgrading the part-time position to full-time field assessor. Why?
Brad, go up to the top. You're at the end. On my screen, we're at the last slide.
Oh, I'm on the first one right here.
We're on the last page.
Really?
Yep. That's what I'm seeing.
It's not what I'm seeing.
It's probably because you had it in present. You using two screens?
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
think presentation view works to share, Brad. So you might
Yeah.
just have to.
Yeah, you're gonna have to roll through it like that if you have, especially if you have two monitors.
And hold on. Let me try it again. How about now?
It's at the end still,
No,
but
so-
Oh, that's weird.
I can see that you're moving it. You're good.
Yeah, okay. No, I think we'll just start here.
No, it's working now.
Okay. It's on a different screen, so. All right, let's start here. The Middleton Assessor's Office, past and present. For many years, the board performed office and field work on a part-time basis with assistance from a revaluation company, MMC, and a clerk in the office. The first assistant assessor, Tom Acciabatti, was hired in the early 80s. He served here until 1995. He and the full-time clerk handled the office and field work for many years with the assistance of a revaluation firm. In 2000, the administrative assessor position was created to handle more administrative functions and assist the department head. A part-time person was here to do the data entry and assist in the office. The fieldwork duties were added to the part-time assessing clerk approximately, I think it was 5 years ago, maybe 7. The administrative assessor position was created back in 2000 when we had a vacancy for the union clerk. She left to go to Wenham. And so that's when we made the change with that. So this has been the current staffing that we've had since 2000. The 18-hour position at one point was 20 hours. And then a number of years ago, we brought it back down under. The town has changed. Since 2000, the total number of parcels has increased 28%. Since 2000, the number of single-family homes has increased 26%, a 75% increase since 1988. And that's as far back as I could get the records on that. The size and complexity of homes has grown as well. What we used to see as a typical house in Middleton has certainly changed. Hey, wait a minute. I think I'm missing something on this one. Hold on a second.
You're missing
Yeah.
2 slides.
Hold on a second. Why did I? Hold on. Oh, yeah, okay, sorry. We had added something in here, hold on. These were the typical homes built in 1996 and 1999. Very simple colonials, although nice, but very basic.
They're not showing.
Really?
Nope.
God.
Well, you can explain it, Brad. It's everybody that knows how houses have changed and how much bigger and more complex the houses are, even without the slide.
Well, there's more to this, so hold on. I don't know why this is having a problem here. Jeez. Share screen, okay. Was this the one? Why am I having trouble here?
Brad, I think you can just explain it. I don't know if you need the slide.
All right, well, for some reason I can't bring up that the other PowerPoint. I don't know why.
So just describe, do a briefing on the size of the homes, square footage wise, to what was to what is.
Yeah, I'm sorry. We had some nice graphics showing some pretty wonderful sketches. So what I was getting to the point was a lot of the homes back in the 90s, early 2000s were very square, basic boxes being built. Everything now has become more complex with angles, curves, circles, that jigsaw type effect. There was, and just enormous houses, and they do take more time to sketch out, look over, things like that. Very complex. Since 2000, Middleton has seen a 133% increase in condominiums. When I first came here in 2000, we had 4 complexes. Fort Pond, Ferncroft, 77 Maple Street, and a condex down on East Street. We've got 55 various residential condominium complexes now, each with their own unique issues as far as sales. We have 909 condos now, and I'll make a point to say that even though we're a lot of condos, we only took 1 appeal from a condominium this year, which I think is pretty good. But lots of work. Commercial industrial property has grown and has become more complex. When I first came here, most of the stuff was pretty average industrial commercial type property. Certainly that has changed, where we have much more specific things, a lot of commercial condominiums, industrial condominiums. We got, solar fields, we have ice rinks, we've got large manufacturing complexes. Very, very different now than it was 20 years ago. And a lot more work to go over those. And especially when they're created, a lot more work to do.
Brad, can I just add something?
Sure.
In for the commercial and industrial, we also have a water park. I can tell you, Brad and I spend a lot of time on making sure that value is correct. When we went to measure and list that property, it took us 3 days. 3 days because who knows how to value water park? We had to go back to a cost manual. It's called the Marshall Swift manual. Most assessors use it because how do you know how many linear feet of piping for the water that is running this water park? The filtration systems, we had to come up and figure all that out. So I just wanted to add in, not only are we dealing with so much more complexity in our commercial and industrial, but we also have a lot of unique things coming to our town. Now, I can tell you we had a conversation with the owners of the water park, and the reason they built on Middleton side was because we have a single tax rate. So it's not just valuing the property. We also have to have ongoing conversations to avoid appeals through the appellate tax board. There's a lot more work that goes into just outside of measuring and listing property and valuing them. So I just wanted to add that. Go ahead, Fred.
Oh, I just lost everybody. Where'd they go? There we go. Okay, hold on. Gosh. Everybody see the slides?
Yep.
Okay. Personal property. This function is performed in-house without vendor assistance. We're one of the only towns around that does this. I used to work in this field primarily when I first started in assessment work. We have more accounts, and some of them are far more complex. It used to be more mom and pop type stuff. Certainly, we've had a huge change in a lot of businesses in this town. And we have saved money. We've saved a lot of money over the last 20 years doing it in-house and keeping a tight control on that. Hold on a second. Just bear with me a sec here. I think I know what happened. Ah.
Brad, do you want me to share my screen?
Who's that, Terry?
Yep,
Yeah.
Yeah, do you have the PowerPoint presentation?
I do.
Yeah, for some reason I'm having an issue here. Thank you, Terry. So much for testing this earlier.
Okay, so here are the sketches.
Ah, see, this is the one I was trying to, just to go back and talk about these houses. This is some of the simple stuff that was built. And this is the kind of stuff we're dealing with now. Very complex. This house in particular was built in 16. This was like a whole morning just trying to get this sketch right, because it was miserable with all these jogs and all this stuff. And this latest house being built, there's a lot of work here. And it's very difficult to do this kind of stuff in the office.
So do we get, or do you get plans that come over from the building department after a building is built, or do you have to resketch every single one of them?
So we often get the plans, especially something like this, and to sit and take that plan and then move it on to our system is all done by hand. And then trying to make sure we get all the, the floor levels correct too, because the plan is usually multiple page and we're trying to combine that into one sketch. So like this one right here, this is a garage with garage underneath it, and then there's second floor above it. So very complex stuff to do. And we're getting a lot more of this than we ever got, and it takes a long time. Plus, when you're in the field, you're making checks to make sure this looks right when you're there, because sometimes the plans change. So we just wanted to kind of show that graphic.
Tell me what screen you're up to now.
Okay, we talked about condos. The next one. First, yeah, we talked about commercial.
Motor vehicle. We're
Yeah,
on
motor
motor
vehicle.
vehicle.
Oh, we were talking about commercial taxpayers. We'll go back up to that one, or the one with the comparisons there. Top 5 taxpayers in 2001 versus now. Some of them are the same, but the commercial impact back then was 10% of the total value, and now the commercial is down to the 4.19, but that doesn't make it any less work. Back then we had basically Verizon, the Ferncroft Golf Course, Richardson, and Bostic and Market Basket being the biggest ones. Now this top 5 list has changed up, and there's a lot more on there that are still very high, but they're just below the top 5. So go to the next slide. The 14, Terry?
14?
Yep, sorry. Nope, now go to 15, sorry. All right, motor vehicle excise is the major revenue source outside of the tax rate. That has grown 36% since 2000. Our office processes these bill files and all the abatements that are filed on a monthly basis. So we've had a lot more vehicles. Certainly the value of those is increased from years ago as well. Property transfers are received daily from the Registry of Deeds. We used to get them in the mail monthly. Now we're getting them electronically sent to us. We're putting them in daily into the system. All of us in the office, we review the deeds for accuracy to see if our maps are jiving with what is being transferred. Checking other parts of the deed elements. And then if the deed is not going to be used in any sort of sales analysis, it's removed as far as coded out in our system. All those sales are then used annually to create our CAMA model that we apply town-wide. So we're looking at those sales every day. We're reviewing all that stuff with MLS, and we are looking at them in the field, talking with brokers, talking with attorneys when we have a difficult sale, and getting all the information. We work diligently with the public, Director of Veteran Services, and the Council on Aging Director to assist taxpayers in determining eligibility for the multiple statutory exemptions offered by the town, deferral programs, and the Senior and Veteran Work-Off Program. We currently process an average of 77 statutory exemption applications We're also processing up to about 50 senior work-off vouchers annually. The thing with these exemptions, if you just go back, Terry, a lot of these things used to be simple years ago. Now that people are doing a lot more estate planning, they're putting things in trusts and all sorts of different things. We have to spend a lot more time reviewing their applications to make sure that they're actually eligible for these things. Certainly people have much more complex financials now with different pensions, different kinds of annuities, things like that. I know Terry spends a lot of time going over these things, including tax returns, to make sure that people are not trying to scam us and that they do qualify. Building permits. We receive hard copy monthly reports from the building commissioner's office and enter them into Patriot manually. We average about 444 permits a year. Some years, obviously, a little bit more, some years, obviously less, depending on construction. A lot of times we have to take that permit list, make sure we have the right information, sort of reconcile it with their records, and then put the permit in Patriot. And then do some reports to verify everything's correct. Of all these permits, they all require physical inspection. The purpose is to verify the permit work and identify any new growth. In addition to photographing the property, we verify our existing data and make necessary changes to maintain accuracy. So currently I've been doing all the building permit work, but sometimes it would be better if somebody could be doing some of the simple stuff so I could concentrate on other things. Next slide, Terry. GIS. The assessor's office is the main source for the base information for GIS. The assistant assessor is the GIS coordinator. GIS is the future in everything. Businesses, government, everybody's using this stuff. The advancements are unbelievable what you can do. There are increasing opportunities for all departments in Middleton to be using GIS. Although it is an amazing tool utilized by all departments, there is work and maintenance behind it. We certainly spend more time updating information and layer development. Next slide, Terry. Field assessor position versus outsourcing with vendors. Consistent data collection and accuracy from one person instead of multiple persons. Typically, evaluation firms utilize different personnel with different levels of ability who work quickly but not always thoroughly. Direct oversight of work by the department head would be inspecting all year versus a small window of time. Currently, if you hire a reval company to do some field work, they send out 1 or 2 people out of their crew to work in the good weather, obviously. And then you're kind of scrunching everything up. And we have to give them what we want. Having somebody on staff to do this full time would be great. They could be looking at stuff right now, especially sales. They could be looking at some of the simple permits. It would speed up a lot of that process. Next slide. Having that would allow more time for the administrative assessor to focus on other priorities. Discussions and explanations to taxpayers and the public, billing files, motor vehicle excise, record retention, assisting me with some statistical work, assisting with abatements and appellate cases, assisting with mapping maintenance, preparing meeting notices, agendas, and minutes for the board, mailing and review and data entry of income and expense forms, forms of lists, 3 ABC forms, chapter property, and exemptions. Somebody have a question? No? Okay. Having somebody doing that would also allow more time for me to when I need time to discuss things with taxpayers and the public as well. Statistical analysis of condominiums and single family homes. Like I said, we have far more condominiums. I spend as much time or more on that than I do doing statistical studies for the houses. Building permits for new construction. I'm still doing those because I want to see what's being built. It's important to know. I think it's better when I know what's being built. I can see the quality differences between builders and make adjustments in the system for that. Doing camera updates, personal property data collection evaluation, abatement applications, appellate cases, mapping maintenance, GIS maintenance, meeting preparation, and finalizing growth and values for tax rate. Next slide, Terry. The board and myself have always stressed the importance of data integrity through accuracy in fieldwork and data entry. Our office is also pledged to educating the taxpayer on how values are derived, the appeal process, and how municipal finance works. We received much positive feedback for this. This is accomplished by the diligent work of the office personnel. Due to this policy, abatements since 2000 have trended downward, saving overlay, which is released to surplus. I don't know if you ever get any feedback as far as the selectmen and the finance committee. We spend a lot of time explaining things to taxpayers when they come in. And I think a lot of people have learned a lot and understand what we're doing. And certainly a lot less aggravated people. They might not agree with their tax bill, but they're leaving with a better sense of how it's created. The duties of the field assessor would be reviewing sale properties throughout the year, probably on a monthly or a weekly basis. Maintaining cyclical inspections throughout the year is required by the Department of Revenue. We are currently behind schedule on that. COVID-19 really threw us and a lot of assessors around the state into a little bit of a bind with that, being that it's hard to get into people's homes. People don't want us on their property generally, and they certainly don't want us around during this COVID time. We also would like them to be doing some of the easier building inspection permits and some field review when we're going over large areas during a certification. We currently are funding the part-time position at 22.9. We are not looking to add a position. We are requesting to increase the current position to full-time and rework the duties and qualifications. Should this position remain in the clerical union, the duties are inconsistent with the clerical union. So we would want guidance as to how we should approach this. A non-union salary would be a range of 43.5 to 47.5. An increase in the current union position would be 49,930. So the effective increase to the department budget would be between 24.6 and 27.30. Cost savings. So I reached out to our vendor to get some quotes and talked with a couple other assessors as well. If we were just having Patriot do our residential certification this year, it would be $16,000. We do it in-house. The interim year adjustments every year, if we paid them, would be about $8,500. We're doing it in-house. Cyclical inspections, if we pay Patriot to do it, it's $20 and then $3 additional if they're doing the data entry. We are currently doing that in-house. Same thing with building permits. We're doing all that in-house. Sale reviews, same thing. If we had Patriot out looking at everything, it would cost us a pretty good penny every year. Personal property, like I said, we've been saving money every year for 20 years doing it in-house. Commercial and industrial data collection and data entry. We do all that in-house. The only thing that Patriot does for us is the valuation work, because they were looking at things on a regional approach. It just makes it easier when submitting stuff to the DOR. They would prefer to be looking at commercial industrial as a regional, not as just strictly the town. Next slide. We thank you for your continued support, and we would appreciate consideration of our request. Any questions?
Brad, why are you proposing taking the position out of the union? And what would trigger that?
So if somebody's working in the field all day, that's really not a clerical position, is it?
Well,
Not
I
doing-
would assume the person's in the field now, correct?
Part-time. They're doing some, well, nothing right now. We're doing some data collection, but also some office work. What we're saying is we'd like to have somebody in the field 99% of the time, where they're doing some data entry or organizing their work to go out. And does that really fall into the clerical union parameters? I don't think so.
And my second question is on the wage comparison of the position, is built into your cost is also the increase of a non-benefited position to a benefited position?
I don't have the benefits on that.
No, Brian, that total cost compared to the numbers that Brad showed you is an overall increase of approximately $60,000 to the operating budget.
If that person took benefits.
We still have to budget for it.
Yeah, we have to budget for it.
I understand that.
Yep.
Somebody have a question, or am I just hearing background?
No, I don't know. But I don't know, with that, so the non-union union, is that just, what was I gonna say, are we just benefiting from a savings standpoint, or is there another area in that benefits your department?
We figured we could hire a field person potentially for less money. They would be subject to the pay increases like the rest of us, not necessarily union increases.
Okay.
I think the biggest question is, I would assume a clerical position is doing clerical work all the time. I think of all the other union people, they're not doing any sort of field work. We don't put the building and part-time building inspectors in the union. So that's how I was looking at that.
Mm-hmm. So it's a combination. So thanks.
Definitely.
I'd like to add something to the purpose of this position going in the direction that we're looking for it to go in. One of the biggest things we have to remember is the new growth, because as we're out there doing field work, you're picking up new growth most of the time. And when I say most of the time, I mean 90% of the time. So although we're looking at increasing our budget, and I understand for the benefited position that we have to budget for that in the event that the new employee does take on the benefits, we also could recapture those funds annually just in the new growth. I can tell you on my cyclical, and I am very faithful in doing my cyclical annually, I do outsource it. I'm going to be honest with you. I do some of it and I outsource some of it. At the end of the day, I gain more than $60,000 a year just in my cyclical reviews. The numbers are out there and we are behind, and we're not behind just because of COVID. We're behind because of staffing. Everything is done in-house, and we're just running out of manpower. We're running out of time. In the Department of Revenue has changed their stats that we have to recertify every 5 years now. It used to be every 3. So what that means is they are beginning to really buckle down, and you have to do a third of the town. And within that 9-year period, you have to have that 100% of the town completely remeasured, relisted. So if we did it on an annual basis and we had the maintenance, you're gaining that growth value every year. I can't stress that enough. I can't imagine with the increase that we're asking for that we're not going to capture that back into the revenue source. And we really shouldn't be missing the growth regardless. As far as a vendor service, you have to be really careful with that. As Brad said, you can hire a vendor, but you don't always have the ability to say, well, that person doesn't really know how to measure a house. So if, for instance, if we went to an outsourcing function and they're not doing a good job, I always go and just spot check. But I've had instances where the people didn't know what they were doing. Who went back out and had to redo all that work? We don't have time to do that. Having someone on staff, you have continuity of your data. That data becomes the tax bill of these residents of this town. We can't lose sight of that. So the continuity and the consistency is vitally important. Yeah, I do outsource in North Reading, but you know what? I'm pretty fortunate with who I work with because I've worked with them forever. I have a lot of control over who I say works there. So I can't stress enough about us recapturing that, the missing growth, that if we had someone on staff on a full-time basis, that we're not gonna make up that money that we're spending in the position. That's really what I want to say. Yeah, I don't know if any of you have any questions. This office hasn't changed. I've been on this board, I don't even know how many terms. I've forgotten what number I'm on.
Longer than I've been there.
We haven't changed. And I'm gonna be honest with you, you know, Brad and I work a lot together, but come the day when I retire, in my opinion, this office is a very key financial office to this town. And we can't lose sight of that. We have to know that we're creating proper tax bills, accurate is a better word, tax bills for our taxpayers, all along gaining this growth revenue. So I wanted to add that. It's been a tough year and I understand that, and I understand the budget. I do this full-time myself. And I totally understand, but I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think there's no better time to fund this position than now.
I believe that, you know, having accurate data and capturing all the growth that you can is a benefit to the town. But we also have to see how our expenses are compared to that benefit. So earlier, Andy, you had brought up the pay equity study that's been done. To me, it's kind of a simple analysis, in this issue. Look at some of the towns that are of comparable complexity over a 3-year period. What have they budgeted for their assessing operations? Break it down to a per parcel cost, and how do we fit into that under our current staffing and under the proposed staffing? If we are within the appropriate normal on a per parcel cost with the new staffing position, we should go for it. If that brings us over the average of comparable communities, then it may be a different question. But without that study, we're just talking hypotheticals. And I'd rather have that study to make that decision.
Fair enough.
Yeah, and I'd just add to that, I'm concerned about a position role that While it'll be more field-based, it's really not changing from the current role. It looks to be just more hours and benefits, which is driving the cost. This isn't a dramatic revamp of the position. I would fully expect that there will be pushback from the clerical union on this position being removed. So I'd also like to see what the cost would be if that was full-time within a clerical union role and full-time as you're proposed in a non-union, because I'll say it out loud, I fully expect it would be grieved by the union of that position being taken out. And what does that do to the time frame? What does that do to, if we make this decision to fulfill the position, what does that do to recruitment? Because you may be looking at two different salary ranges. Or to the point, to add to what you said, Costa, not just the per parcel of, what does a field position in a town this size actually merit in a salary range from 25 to 75% of a adequate price.
So does that study take into account the vendor services versus in-house?
Yeah, the entire assessing operation.
Operating budget, yeah.
So
Okay.
whether it's in, for instance, our, benefits are not in the department budget, they're in the unclassified budget.
Right.
So you gotta be able to compare apples to apples, and you can't use Boxford as a comparison because that's all single family homes, which is a different complexity than having, the personal property and the commercial. So you have to pick the right communities that are similar complexity and make sure you capture all the assessing costs, wherever they are in their operating or non-operating budgets. That's why I suggested a 3-year period, and then see what the per parcel cost is. We have done that on the Board of Assessors years ago.
Yeah.
With respect to, the compensation for the Brad's compensation. So we can, so it can be done, and I think it can be done fairly quickly.
So have you already started that study with different departments?
The per parcel, it only applies to assessors.
No, but I'm saying, I thought you said there was a larger study going on?
Well, there was a pay equity
Okay.
plan that, Andy and Tanya are working on, but that referred to, compensation of individual positions.
Okay.
This, what I'm suggesting, is overall budget cost for assessing operations. So they're two different studies.
Yep.
They may use the same communities, but you're looking at different information.
Okay.
Yeah, and the point to that study, Brad and Debbie and others, that I think makes sense is both Andy and Tanya did a lot of work of making sure that we were talking apples to apples, because, just for example, looking at the pay equity study around the Department of Public Works, you can't look at a town and says, hey, it's a similar sized town population. What is their lane miles? Do they have a water department? Do they not have a water department? Do they have a sewer department? Do they have a, curbside trash pickup or a recycling facility like we do? So try to get that same similarity in there of looking at towns that have similar makeup of parcels and size. And, you may not find a town that has had past growth that has looked like ours, but what is our growth looking like going forward? In the last 5 years to maybe 5 years out as we're projecting that supposed, what we call the canary in the coal mine as we look at building permits being pulled and others. And then it gives us a real apples to apples comparison.
Yeah.
Rick, you're
You
muted.
have Andy, is there a list of towns that are similar size to us?
Thank you.
Andy?
If I
Andy
might,
must have
Brad,
audio off.
we can discuss with you. We have a list of comps, but we could help you figure out exactly how to do this.
Okay, thank you.
And I just want to say I was in agreement with Brian and Costa in that it would give us a greater justification and a better vision of it other than, I mean, I understand what you're requesting and what you want, but just as it is, I don't see a big enough distinction, justifying it. And again, when it would come to collective bargaining and union and grievances like that, I would like to have much more, justification than just what we talked about.
And I think the last thing I just want to add to this is, I don't think we're having a debate. I don't think this debate is just fully on the merits of it. I mean, I completely agree that the history of the assessing department, and Debbie, you've been there a long time, and as have you, Brad, and Costa, you've got a lot of experience. Jeff, you've been on for a while. You guys have saved us a lot of money over the years by doing things in-house. I mean, we used to call it the Middleton way, but it has actually been very successful for us. The biggest concern that I have in this budget process, the cycle, is I'm not sure how many of you were on the earlier part of our meeting where both Sarah and Andy talked a lot about what our revenue receipts are going to look like. We found for FY2021, there was so much concern in some of our local receipts have gone down because of COVID. We really don't know what to expect in 2022. We're taking very conservative approaches that we may have to take even more conservatively. We just had a discussion with Masco that, the administration wants to reduce FTEs based on enrollment, and the school committee is on a completely different position. So we may be looking at
only a portion of the school committee.
Yes, thank you, Costa. Thank you, Costa. I appreciate that. But what we're seeing is a misalignment that's happening over in that budget that could translate to much later in the budget process, i.e. April, where we could be looking at a reasonable to a somewhat larger increase at Masco to a extremely substantial increase. So I don't want you guys to leave here thinking that because we may not seem very warm to the item right now or aren't jumping at the idea of increasing these costs could bring us revenue in the other end. It's not that. There is so much what if in this budget. And if anything, since March of last year to now has proven us is, do we have another big curveball being thrown at us because of COVID and revenue and shutdowns and local tax revenue? Luckily, we're not so dependent on local aid. Great news is the legislature is looking like they're going to keep our local aid numbers a little bit increased, which came out to, I think, $11,000. However, the bigger issue is the other revenue issues that, I'm sure Sarah tosses and turns at night over this. So this may not be a decision that we can make until very late in the process.
Great.
Yeah, we can do some analysis. Again, it's not just, to Costa's point, it's not just population, it's complexity and the makeup of the tax base. So, but we can do some work on that hopefully for the March meeting.
But I understand you actually have to backfill the position. Is it vacant right now or becoming vacant?
It's vacant because Donna's left to go to Linfield.
So my question is, can you wait? You'd have to wait until July 1st for, if it went full time, to actually fund a full time. What is your plan to, 5 months, 6 months? If we go to town meeting and it passes, you can start the process knowing that in July 1st, the dollars would be there. But are you looking to backfill temporarily? What's the plan?
I think we may have to backfill temporarily just to have some staffing there to do some stuff. I think it's going to be hard to, I don't know if it's going to be hard or not, to hire somebody that knows what they're doing for a short amount of time and if they're interested in the full time.
Okay.
That's a good thing to worry about.
Okay. Thanks, Brad.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for the transfer, by the way, FinCom. That'll help out too.
Make money.
Okay.
Hopefully $40,000 like that.
It's not really making money. It's extending tax revenue.
Wow.
Staying afloat.
You know what I mean, though.
Yeah.
More than we thought.
Absolutely.
All right. Any other questions for us at all in general?
All right. Thank you, Brad, Debbie, and Teresa.
Okay.
Thank
you very
you.
much.
Have a good weekend.
Have a
You too,
good,
guys.
have a good weekend, guys.
All right.
Thank you for all you
Bye-bye.
do.
Thank you as well. Okay. Then we'll be looking for Mr. Fullerton. He is on. There he is. Good morning, Derek. It's still morning? Pretty much. Good morning, Derek. How are you? Whoop, you're on mute again.
Morning, everybody.
There you go. Nice. Okay, so basically we're just asking for your your overview of your fiscal 22 year budget request.
Thanks, everybody. I'll start off with just the Board of Health. Since was requested to be level funded, there's really no change in my budget other than the COLA increases. I did request a further increase above and beyond the COLA for my public health nurse. I know that's in the supplemental budget that was submitted. That was the only major change that would be noticeable on the budget. That was a request to go from $40.87 an hour to $45 an hour. Other than that, the the budget is level funded. Besides the salary and wages.
Yeah, Derek, could you talk a little bit about on the hourly wage increase that was proposed? I saw in the supplemental document. I'm trying to pull it up now. You had some yes, you had some comparison as it related to other communities in the payment.
Yeah. So the ones that I was able to gather weekly, we have a local health director Zoom meeting through the pandemic, and I was able to get verbally in the chat on the Zoom the hourly rates of communities around us. Now, they are not all apples to apples. There's some cities, but there are some other small towns in there. If you don't see that, I'm not sure if it's included, but I can go through it real quick. Middleton is at 40.
Yeah, I see it. It's actually on the screen now. So,
good.
Okay. So you're proposing to what, 45 was it?
Yeah, 45. If you take those averages, you can average it out. It comes to about 44.17 an hour for all those communities there. I mean, like I said, they're not apples to apples, but
yeah, I think the only orange in those apples is Oxford and Topsfield, and utilizing VNA. There's not only just a fully loaded rate, but there's I know this is a bad term, but there's a profit margin in there for the VNA as well, although they may be a not-for-profit. So it's not like a full apples to apples. So you're proposing both a little less than $5 an hour increase as well as an increase in hours?
No increase in hours.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Derek, have you discussed with Boxford and Topsfield sharing Tracy?
Yeah, we tried that 13 years ago and they had no interest, and we tried it a few years ago when the VNA was about to leave Boxford and Topsfield, but they ended up negotiating and staying. Tracy, unfortunately, it wouldn't be like sharing Tracy, it would be sharing a new position, because we probably would lose Tracy, because Tracy is, when that opportunity sailed past, I actually went to the Board of Health meetings and proposed the regional public health nurse. And at that time, it wasn't seen as advantageous. That ship has sailed because Tracy then took another position with the town of Wilmington, where she's the, works 20 hours and paid with benefits as a public health nurse. So it would have to be quite a revisit and, pull Tracy away from Wilmington if the salary and the benefits were all there. But no, we haven't had that conversation in a couple of years. We started talking about it a couple of years ago when the VNA was talking about leaving those towns, but they ended up staying on.
All right. And given what has happened the past year, how has the 8 hours worked? I'm sure you could have used more.
Well, Tracy has done more than the 8 hours. Thankfully, she's been doing a lot more than the 8 hours. She does her 20 hours. It's kind of it's a chess game. So she does her 20 hours in Wilmington, but then when she hits the 20-hour mark, she has other contract nurses that are doing above and beyond through the CARES Act. And then when she does her 8 hours here, then she kicks on into the CARES Act above and beyond the 8 hours with some other contract nurses and contact traces. So she, by all means, is probably working just as much as me or more. Right now, as we speak, she's in Middleton doing homebound visits to seniors that are true homebounds currently today. So she doesn't do the 8 hours. She does more than that she gets paid for, even with the CARES Act. So she's been serving our community above and beyond. And I don't try to pay somebody in fear of losing them. I pay for what the service and what their value is and what the industry value is. And, you know, it's capitalist market right now. Nurses are high demand. They're getting paid up at the DoubleTree at the mega site, $60 an hour. I know it's a temporary position, but, you know, she's been with us for 13 years, getting small COLA raises along the way. I just feel that, you know, she does above and beyond. And I think anybody in this town, if you surveyed 10,000 residents, whoever's had an experience with Tracy as a public health nurse would advocate for what she does. I think our first responders and our chiefs and all them would say the same, and our captains.
Yeah, so I think similar to the discussion we just had with the assessors, I think this is a logical discussion of looking at this position in terms of salary in comparison in the hourly. I also, while the VNA, and unfortunately that, well, I guess fortunate for her and very fortunate for us that she continues to work even sometimes more than her 8 hours, that she's now in Wilmington with many more hours that would probably preclude this from happening with a Boxford, Topsfield, Middleton. But as I've talked to you before, Derek, I think COVID and what's going to happen post-COVID is going to be more of a strain on local health departments. While the vaccine rollout is not relying on local health departments as we maybe thought they would, the future of this is going to have to rely on local health departments, whether it's annual boosters or any other activities. And if we've learned anything about vaccine rollout that's happening right now, is that the system gets extremely overwhelmed pretty quickly. The problem is not every local health department has the capacity to do it. You guys have done a great job in annual flu vaccines and other items like that that have done a lot with a little. I think this is an awesome opportunity beyond the discussion of the hourly wage for this, but an awesome opportunity for us to look at how we can work more collaboratively with other towns. And maybe it's not Boxford and Topsfield. I mean, we always seem to gravitate to Tri-Town because schools or the term Tri-Town or whatever it is, but an opportunity that, you know, if contact tracing becomes a big issue again later in the year like it is right now, or the need for booster vaccines that may happen around COVID, or even just what COVID has done is really raise the awareness and need for public health surveillance, disease prevention, and health promotion activities. And a lot of that is going to happen in local departments of public health. I mean, you've said before, historically, the Department of Health was the septic board, and then the Title V board, and it's a lot more than that. And I know in Boxford there's a lot around animal and animal care and so forth that happens with the horses in there. I know there's a lot of other activities in different towns, but I think this is a ripe opportunity to have a discussion, maybe not any movement, but a discussion toward how multiple towns could assist, not with the daily operations that you and your staff do, but these big surges that have happened because of COVID that can help prepare what is going to be COVID here for a long period of time. It's not disappearing after everybody gets vaccinated. This is here forever.
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to get off my soapbox here.
No, I appreciate that. I mean, as the public health director, we're continuing to explore. I serve on a task force with MAPC on, you know, cross-jurisdictional shared resources, trying to look at avenues for the future. I've been on that for about a year and a half, and COVID kind of put it on the shelf. But we're always looking at ways to do things more efficiently, better, with collected resources and collected services, you know, reaching more people with better programs, true population health management, working with hospitals and local medical facilities, et cetera. So it's always the big picture. Just remember, you know, when I did get hired 13 years ago, 14, almost 15 years ago, you know, but my number one question asked by the selectmen, by the Board of Health was, can we get away from being a septic committee? And that's what we did. The last 14 years, we've been doing programs, public health efforts, things. Septic is not even really a conversation of our public health meetings anymore in our services, other than just, how we serve our residents. But 14 years ago, we're still at pretty much besides the addition of a public health nurse, we're still at the same workforce. So I get we're collectively against the school budget and things coming down the pipeline, but just always keep that in the back of your mind that we're still a 1.2 department for, a town that's, quite demanding compared to our tri-town partners in terms of commercial and residential and everything else that comes with it. So I just ask for your continued support of the department going on. Other than that, I do not have anything else for the health department. The animal control department and the conservation departments are just the normal COLA increase in level funded budget. So there's no changes in those. And then the IT, I think we're going to discuss after with Tanya, but I'm happy to answer anything if you have any questions.
I think we'd be remiss, and I know you're coming before our board next week, but we'd be remiss if, I just want to thank you and the staff for the amount of communication you've done around the town. I mean, if we've learned anything from COVID is people are hungry for info, from Andy's regular weekly videos and updates to just, the weekly reports you've put out, Derek. I watch it on social media. I watch how people, both wait for it and utilize it. I think a lot of that communication that you put out cut through the difficulty of seeing it across the state, whether it's from a governor's press conference or a newspaper story or a TV. You've been really clear, and I think it's helped a lot. And I think it's raised significantly the awareness of the folks and the taxpayers in town on what our public health department and what our public health director does. So, I just want to say thank you for that.
Thank you. And just so everybody's on here, I'll just let you know that this week is a very busy week for us. We have 6 vaccination clinics here in Middleton. Today we started our homebounds. I'm going to be joining up with Tracy soon to do that right after this meeting. We're doing our Northeast ARC today, our congregate care setting. We're doing our Council on Aging, specific groups that meet the phasing on Monday. We're doing Orchard Circle next week, Oak Knoll next week, and Ferncroft Towers next week. And that's all Middleton with Tracy and myself and a band of volunteers. So that's in 1 week. We are putting a lot of shots in a lot of people's arms. So this is what we do. And we still have the mega site. It's a large piece of the puzzle, but it's not the only piece, but we'll do what we can as a piece of the puzzle as a health department.
Thank you, Derek. Am I muted again?
No.
Okay. All right. Yeah, certainly. You've been put through your paces in this one, as we all have, but thanks for your efforts. You want to segue right into the information technology?
Sure. So the IT budget is much larger than what I control. I control only a couple sections within it. The contractual services IT and the IT supplies. Basically, a lot of those items are running items. They continue annually as they would with most operating budgets. Our capital budgets are more of sometimes bigger chunks. So there's really not much you're going to see in the contractual services that changes. Sometimes we might have new technology. We might be adding that into an annual warranty service or an annual renewal service. But we have a lot of those are standing items in terms of technology supplies. Those are usually handled, that line items mostly for our computer upgrades. We're currently going through a cycle right now of, I believe, 10 or 11, computer upgrades in this fiscal year that has just been specified and is in the process of being engineered and implemented by HIQ. So a lot of the other IT functions are by the accountant, the assessor, and Tanya. So I'm happy to answer any of the two line items if you guys have any questions related to that.
That Derek, anything else you want to add?
No.
Okay, and I'll just jump in here just to say that we began last year and we continued this year to consolidate a lot of things that were in individual department budgets into the IT budget. So that's what Derek was alluding to there. But we're also anticipating that during this coming year, we're going to enter in the beginning phases of a collaboration with 6 other towns, including Topsfield, Danvers, Hamilton, Wenham, Manchester by the Sea, and Essex. And this first phase of what we're looking at would contribute a small amount of money to Danvers, around $4,000, so that we could utilize their IT director for consulting services. And then hopefully in the future, we're not sure exactly the timeline of this, joining together to find one consultant that would work for all of the towns, or at least a portion of the town, looking to do all the towns together. So that's what we're looking forward to in the future. It shouldn't change our budget substantially, in that would just change over potentially. We don't know, our current consultant could end up being the one we use throughout all of the towns, but it might also mean a change, but it shouldn't mean a substantial change to our budget. We're also working on connecting all of those towns by fiber, and that's coming along. We're hoping that Middleton can begin our internal loop sometime soon, as we budgeted for that in our capital, and then looking towards getting connected to Danvers in the future. So I just wanted to take a moment to say that's what we're looking forward to conceptually in the future. So yeah, any questions on that?
That's all we've got for IT, Rick.
That's no, okay, all right.
Tanya, can you check the waiting room to see if Paul is there?
Yep, I just got him. I wasn't, since I was talking, I wasn't looking, but I just got him. Thanks.
He is there. Okay,
No
great.
problem. I was just texting with him, so.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Tanya. Thanks, Derek.
Thank you.
All right, moving right along. Mr. Goodwin.
Yes, sir.
If you would, please. Good morning still. Good late morning. Nice to see you. Sure, good. Go ahead. You have the floor. You wanna?
Paul, give me 1 second. I'm just bringing your budget up and clear
Okay.
go.
Here's to hoping that, you know, some people get to watch the game, Paul, and not,
Don't say it, Rick, that we've been through this before with Andy. He says something about that and you know what happens, so don't say it.
I'm gonna have some unhappy employees if they have to come in and plow tomorrow.
yeah.
Paul, we should be all set.
Okay,
Well, there you go.
short and sweet. Everything was level funded as requested. Except for a couple minor increases with some tri-town contract stuff like the line painting and the catch basin cleaning. Salaries were 1%. We're still going through a union negotiation, so that may fluctuate a little bit. Trying to think of some. The biggest increase obviously was the transfer station, and that is because of a 20% increase in tonnage to get rid of trash.
Paul, have you seen an increase in our tonnage just because obviously so many people have been staying at home?
Yes, big increase, especially April, May, and June.
A lot of takeout boxes.
Yeah.
A lot of people
People cleaning out their basements and attics.
Basements and attics, absolutely.
Because they were looking at it for too long. Right.
Yep, that was a significant increase, a couple $1,000s a month.
Can you go back to the showed the landfill increase just because I wanted to.
Yep, that's right here within the contractual services. Right, Paul, am I in the right spot?
There was a bigger number before that I thought went to.
Oh, that was the total I think you were looking at.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
Oh, yeah,
and
that might have just
but
been-
of that, okay, that's showing what the increase was. Thank you. That's good.
Yep.
Yeah, contractual services. That's because the price is going up from $75
As a
a
result
ton
of the increase.
to $90 a ton.
Yep, so we're going up from 170 to 214 in this line item here.
Got it. Got it.
Sarah, I don't know if you got my email yesterday. I finally got a price back for monitoring wells in the landfill.
I did, yep. Nothing has been updated in ClearGov. This is still the numbers that you submitted with your budget. So that is down.
Yeah, you just had it 55. Right there.
Yep.
Yeah, it'll be 57,165 now.
57,165.
Yeah.
Just like that, it's updated.
Cool. All right.
And again, I mean, I don't know what you guys want to do. I mean, I don't see the need to go line item by line item if it's just zero. So.
No. Nope, that's good.
No, Paul, I think you've covered everything. I will say one thing that we are going to do with the transfer station this year, which we meant to do last year, it was just an oversight on my end, is breaking out the actual overtime costs and part-time wages. It used to all just be in salaries and wages, but now we'll be able to see how much I should say we should be able to see easier how much we're spending in overtime, and just to, go under and actually break out our part-time costs as well associated with that. So that's why it looks like this line item is going down 31%. It really isn't. It's just breaking it out to be more accurate.
Mm-hmm.
Sarah, you and I did discuss in snow and ice. I'm not sure if you did it. We were going to take 10 from overtime and put in equipment maintenance.
Yep. So that's why we see it's a zero, but it's just moving 10 grand between the two to have the money be where it's needed account wise. As we all know, with snow and ice, it doesn't necessarily matter because it's all just a single lump sum budget. But this way, it's easier for Paul to keep track of, how much he has and how much we're spending on certain things.
Did you say it's going to supplies or what was it going?
It's going from overtime to repairs.
Repairs, got it. Okay.
Sorry, just trying to find it.
And how much I try to drag on this, I can't move it, Sarah.
It's right here.
Yeah, there it is. There it is. Okay.
And I apologize because I'm sharing my screen. There's a slight lag when I do it too, so it takes me a second to catch up.
Two people at the wheel.
Yeah. So yeah, we're just moving from 60,000 to 50,000, and then from 20,000 to 30,000, because this is where we're spending most of the money each year.
Okay. All right. Any other questions from anyone or?
Speaking about transfer station, do we have and this may be just a shot at the dark, because I keep being asked this all the time, when the swap shop may reopen? And I know, and I completely understand why it's closed, but.
Yeah, I touched base with Derek about that a while ago. I haven't talked to him lately about it, to be honest with you. He basically said it's my call, but I think it'd be one of those things that might want to be a joint effort kind of thing between myself, Derek, and Andy or something, or you guys do. I'm not sure how I feel, but I'm glad it's closed right now. Maybe once vaccinations start rolling out, at least to town employees, maybe. I don't know.
Ryan, I think it's something that we would want to probably keep it closed during the cold weather, but maybe April or May as things warm up and
I agree.
We're a little bit further into the vaccination period and.
Yeah, I'm surely not advocating for opening it now. I was just wondering if.
Reopening it may lower our tonnage because stuff that people would have left at the transfer station is getting thrown in the dumpster.
Yeah, so we missed that boat. Because I don't know, I don't miss the swap shop being closed, but
I don't either.
I mean, but I'm not hearing it from people like, I guess, you know what I mean? I don't hear, I hear other things about stuff, but I don't hear about that.
And I think we have to have a discussion about what, you know, as the volume has gone up, it may not necessarily continue to go up, but as the volume has gone up and with the increased tipping charges, what percentage of the overall cost is being borne by fee, what percentage of the overall cost is being borne by taxes. And I think we have to have that discussion and assessment and make a determination on rates prior to setting this budget.
Yeah, I know I'll be tarred and feathered in the town square for saying this, but Middleton residents, contrary to what they may say, get a really good deal from the price they pay for up there.
Yeah, I agree. Where were we about looking at? I know we're level funded now, but the trucks transporting the was there an issue with the life expectancy of one of them, or did we already purchase that? Did we take care of that with the lease?
No, that was a big sander. I put that in my capital that I gave Sarah yesterday. The Mac, we've been holding off for 2 years, but that definitely can't go another year. That's without question. And that's a $200,000 piece of equipment.
Have we looked at scenarios of what it would be if a contract carrier hauled rather than us?
Very casually, Andy, myself, and Kenny met with someone a couple times, different haulers. It's all, a lot of it, this is a topic for another discussion a longer time, but a lot of it depends on if they're allowed to, quote unquote, operate their operations out of our land.
Yeah, no, I know that. I know that.
Oh, that's where, yeah, that's how we got there.
Okay.
Yeah, to that point, Brian, we've talked to a couple of different haulers, and to in one way or another, they both would need to be running at least a portion of their operation there. So there's a there's a neighborliness question to that, and not to mention
the infrastructure,
the zoning issue. But so
okay.
I mean, it would solve a lot of financial problems, but it would create some different ones.
Right. Okay. Okay. Well, then, if there's no other discussion, Paul, thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
Be safe out there. All right. Moving on, let's go to the fire department with Chief Martinuck.
Morning, everyone. How are you?
Morning, Chief. Good, thank you.
All right, we'll start, go through this pretty simple, straightforward. Increases in salary and wages are just proposed or what had to be increased. I moved the clerk up to the full-time section of the budget from, took her out of the part-time, which she was in last year.
Mm-hmm.
The ambulance lease is in the budget, will be done next fiscal year.
Mm-hmm.
So down to maintenance, the big one, I threw in $10,000 increase to maintenance because last year we were over by 30. This year we're already done and we're over by at least $7,000. And the big things are the ambulance, the current ambulance, a newer ambulance has 72,000 miles on it. We've never put an ambulance in backline service with that many miles on it. And that has cost us about $7,000 in repairs. The new one isn't even ordered yet because of COVID. Everything's been set back. The box takes twice as long now. The engineers were out, so they couldn't draw the pictures. So I don't expect to see that till probably June now. We're hoping late February, March, but that's not going to happen. Engine 2, the newest truck, the newest pump, is up at Cummings again. We had a problem with the back in December. They put a turbocharger on it. It's back up there again with the same problem. So they're probably going to have to put a motor in it. Luckily, that's all under warranty. We were looking at $60,000 worth of repairs in that. And that's the newest truck, the two newest vehicles we have. And I haven't even tested or serviced the other two pumps in the ladder yet. So, I mean, we can reduce that and hope for the best, whatever you guys want to do. But luckily last year we were able to, within my budget, with the help of Sarah, keep it in there. But I don't know, if that's going to happen. I mean, if we can count on that all the time now, but, so yeah, I threw 10 in as a kind of a middle ground.
Chief, and I know when we move from ambulance purchase to the lease process, I know because it's not in the capital budget because it's a multi-year. Just remind me, is this a 2-year cost or was it 3?
We're on
Okay.
year number 2, and then next year will be the last year for that.
Okay, thank you.
And it worked out well because it keeps that ambulance fund money up and keeps a little cushion there. And on another note, yesterday we had no heat at the station. I had to replace the motor and the boiler. That's going to be about $1,000, but it was the original motor. So, I mean, we got our money's worth out of it.
You think?
Yeah. And the ambulance line item, I added $2,300. That's for a CQI agreement that we have with the third party. That's required by the state. So we had to have that done. We can't do it in-house. So these people do a great job, and that's a decent price for that too. And under special expenses, I added, well, it's $4,500 with a 1 year of $1,500 one-time fee for a program called Incident View. It's a great program for us because it just gives us every building in town and structure in town, tells us where the fire department connections are, what hazards are in there, et cetera, et cetera. And there's probably 10 or 15 towns around us that are either getting it or have it. And actually that price may go down because there's so many of us buying from that company. But it's a great tool for us to have. The rec doesn't support it, doesn't have it. So I actually asked Chris Ryan if he'd maybe be able to buy it for us, but he can't. So I think it's a great tool for us, and it's all, obviously anything with IT, it's per computer and license. So that's why it's going to be
Is this a mobile tool that the department takes with them on the vehicle, or is this?
We have, yeah, every computer or MDT, whatever we have, and go on to them, and obviously we're going to have it in the truck, so when we pull up, we know where the stuff is. And it crosses, like if we go to Danvers or PV or North Reading, we can pull up their stuff, and any buildings we go to over there has their information also, and vice versa.
Those of you that can get into ClearGov, if you click on the paperclip here, there's an attachment with the quote on it if anyone wants to look at it further on their own. Or if you want me to email it out, I can do that as well for those of you that have been having trouble getting into ClearGov.
Like I said, that may go down with the multiple purchases, multiple departments that are going to be in it. So.
And what are they calling that again, Chief?
It's called, well, it was called Incident View. I think they were bought out, and it's called, I can't remember what the name of it is now.
Okay. All right. That's
I think that was it.
Let's see.
Any questions about anything? So we also have just an update on the downstairs, the ambulance bay. They have the brickwork up. They just have to put the roof on, and we have to put the garage door on. Again, we're in no hurry because the ambulance won't be here for a couple months. So.
Okay. All righty. I think that's it. Anyone else? No? All right. Chief, thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Have a good day. Stay safe.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chief.
You too, sir. Okay. And then if we're ready, we can move on to the police department.
Good morning, everybody.
Chief DG, how are you, sir?
Good. I have Chief Sampson here with me. We talked yesterday and we decided to get together. So we spent a good hour so far going over some stuff, prepping for this. So he has an idea of what he's going to be in for next year when he has to do this. So
that's great. Thanks for attending, Chief. Good morning.
Oh, good morning. Good to be here.
All right. So go ahead, DG.
Okay. As you can see, the budget really hasn't grown that much this year. Only a couple of areas we had to add a few things. In the fact that we had a cleaning woman for the past 15 years who, when COVID hit, she had to retire. And we went with a cleaning company. They come in twice a week on Mondays and Thursdays. They do a great job, but obviously they're not getting the same money that Gloria got. So we had to increase that portion of the budget. And then with COVID, we also have a company that comes in once a week and electrostatically cleans the police station and the cruisers. So that's another area that we didn't have the money for, so we had to increase a little bit on that area. Other than that, it was pretty much level funded for this year. You'll see some discrepancies in the pay in regards to last year's figures to this year's figures. As you know, we're still not into a contract with the police association yet. So there was a 2% increase budgeted last year in for that. And it was taken out this year. So that's why you see the full-time personal services came down in that area also. We've been really doing really well here, is keeping everybody safe and healthy. Knock on wood. Everybody's been doing what they have to do. Other than that, not really too much to discuss as far as the budget goes. I'm trying to update the chief here on some of the areas that he's going to be dealing with as far as overtime and all the issues that pretty much pertain to the budget itself. So we're going to spend some time. We're trying to make a schedule right now where we can get together over the course of the next few weeks, and then he should be ready to go March 1st. I have a brand new laptop, phone for him getting ready, so we'll be ready to go.
Great. That's great. Let's see here. Yeah, I like how I mentioned it to Derek too, that when the communication, or at least the way you have it set up, that the notifications about strictly with COVID and the addresses, how that flows from Board of Health to, I'm sure it's that way for the fire department. I don't see their emails, but I see the updates that we get, and from the very start of it, it's flowed, and it's still we're still doing it the same way. So it was a good idea, and it's being handled well. So thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
One thing I will add with the police budget is, because we are still in contract negotiations and we are not close to settling with the police union, there is no wage increases budgeted, similar to what we did last year. So for those two, when we eventually settle the contract, there'll be a retro payment that will be needed for both fiscal years, most likely. And then a wage assessment increase that happens, that we'll have to have either at a special town meeting or at the next town meeting, depending on when those contracts are settled. So that's the only difference. In fire, we did have something budgeted because we are close to settling with that union. But with police and also with DPW, there are no wage increases there.
All right. Thank you, Sarah.
Do we want to talk, Andy, about the supplemental piece, or are we going to do that afterwards?
No, I think it's appropriate to do that now, Brian.
Okay.
We, following the lead from the board during the interviews for chief, we did ask Chief DG to figure out what it would cost to fund a superior officer captain for half a year. And so he has put that together. And Chief, I don't know if you want to talk to that, or it's pretty self-explanatory, but.
Yeah, it's obviously I had to speak to Andy in regards to what we thought a fair pay would be for that position. So we did come up with a number. And I suggested that in order to keep the morale here at the police station going, that we would backfill from the sergeant who got the captain and fill that position to a sergeant. So my proposal has the increase for a patrolman to a sergeant and a sergeant to a captain. And we would not be backfilling the full-time position at this time. That'll be maybe in the future coming back for that. But I think it'd be instrumental to make sure that we have the proper command staff. And as you know, we've been talking about this for many years. It's something that's desperately needed in this department, a buffer between the chief and the patrolman and the sergeants, whereas the sergeant and patrolman are all in the same union. Very difficult for a sergeant who is in a union with a reserve to discipline or, write them up. So I think it's many, many, many years overdue. We have some very qualified people who can step into both those positions, captain and sergeant. And that's one of the things that myself and the chief have been talking about is he's going to have to take some time and learn to everybody in the department and get to know the workings of those offices. But it shouldn't take too long to do that. So I did give a half-year total. For a patrolman to a sergeant, it's a 16% increase. And then from the sergeant to the captain, we came up with a number that, based upon the chief's salary and the sergeant's salary, would be something that would be worthwhile for somebody to take. Didn't want to make it too little because you remember they're not going to be getting overtime or unless they work a deal with the union details. So for someone, I mean, we have sergeants now who make upwards of $150,000 to go down to 110 might not be that interested. They might not be that interested, but I'm sure that we have one or two that would jump on that in order to get themselves prepared for their future here.
So chief, or I guess chiefs, or chiefs, with the overtime issue, let's just say the captain's position is created, it's filled, and there is a vacancy in a sergeant's shift. Would that be a captain that would be covering that role?
That's something that I don't believe so, because they're not going to be in the union. I think they'll have some issues with the union if you did that. There may be some language after talking to the union, whether or not if we get down to it and we can't fill it, whether the captain can do it. But that's going to be a talk for Sarah and Andy in regards to how you're going to pay someone overtime if they're a salaried person.
Okay.
In terms of, creating, this new position, throughout the interviews and in talking with our consultants that led the search process, I'd always talked about a lieutenant's position, and I think it makes sense to start with a lieutenant rather than a captain, because it creates the opportunity of creating a promotion opportunity at some point down the road to move the lieutenant from a captain. Whereas if you go directly to a captain, there is no promotion opportunity that I would see.
Costa,
So,
I would say that if we were in a larger police department, I would agree with you. But we don't have, once you get into a position here, there's not that much movement, and you don't want to be top heavy. You don't want to be in a position where you're going to create yourself to be top heavy.
no, I'm not talking about creating both. I'm saying have a lieutenant, and then somewhere down the road, if appropriate, promote the lieutenant to a captain.
You could do that, but I think you'd lose the fact of getting him out of the union as a lieutenant.
Union. Yeah, I think it's
Why wouldn't the
semantic.
lieutenant be out of the union?
Because that's still a bargainable position in Massachusetts. They have very few lieutenants who are out of a union. You'd need to make the position either a captain or a deputy chief to get him out of the
Right.
union.
I didn't know that. I had assumed that anything above a sergeant was out of the union.
No, you could have a superior union that I've talked about for our guys for many years, but the sergeants had no interest in that because they thought that there was strength in numbers.
All right, so I take back my remarks.
Is that just semantics, or that's what we talk about?
Yeah.
All right. Something to think about, though. I know I got to be careful, but you're right, Costa. Somewhere down the road, when the growth happens and we need to put, another piece in there, we're going to want the right person to move into that position and not be kind of the tail wagging the dog, if that's kind of what I mean. So I don't know how you look at it to deal with the union end of it. That's not my
I mean, you could always
Not my
make a
part.
captain now, and then in the future, if you thought you needed a lieutenant's position, you can create a lieutenant's position then. But again, these are talks you're gonna have to have with the new chief.
Right.
Those are only some of the things that I've dealt with in here for, and he has a new outlook, so that's something that you could talk to him about.
So I would say.
And Rick, if I could, just to sort of close out the discussion of the captain's position, as Chief TG said, that's gonna obviously take a lot of long look by Chief Sampson once he's on the job, and some discussions with us and with the board as well. In terms of the line item that we put in the supplemental budget, that is half the year, it's about $49,000 in wages and about a little over $19,000 in benefits. So the total impact is 68.3. Just so the board and the finance committee understand that it's benefits and wages there.
And just so we're clear on timing, so we would be looking somewhere budgetarily that the funding would be available for the captain's position December-ish. And if you look at a logical flow that would happen is a captain would likely be chosen from the sergeant's ranks in the December timeframe, or maybe a little bit prior to that, start in December. And I know when and this is more for the education of the finance committee members, when we talked about this during the interview process and as a board, we thought it was important for the new chief for him to get some time with his sergeants and his patrolmen and patrolwomen to actually, learn everybody, understand strengths, weaknesses, and so forth. So if that was a December timeframe, we would probably be looking at the cost of backfilling the patrolman's position, which would be the cascade that would happen, probably would not happen until, probably sometime around this time next year. Am I correct?
Right.
Okay.
That's what we would expect. Yeah.
Okay.
And I do have in my number here, if I remember correctly, the way I did this, I know DG mentioned not filling the patrolman in this year, but I did add in backfilling the patrolman. So this is the new captain's position, as well as the backfill of both the sergeant and the patrolman in the numbers that you see here. So we would be able to do all of that backfill, which may not be realistic, to do all of that backfill at the same time. But this is at least the cost of doing so.
I would say that the patrolman's position is probably more realistic to happen sooner than the sergeant, because it'll be a cascade that will happen pretty quickly, but that this is going to result in a vacancy in a patrolman's position. You just don't know where the vacancy will be in the sergeant and who would be chosen for that sergeant position. So is your budget numbers, Sarah, showing this all happening budgetarily in December, or is it spread over several months?
It's it's just a lump sum
50%,
amount.
50% lump
for
sum.
half the year. So
Okay.
we
Yep.
hire them in December and they would start in January.
Okay. Thank you.
I don't know how Sarah gave you the number, but for me, the captain was a little bit difficult because you're going based upon four different people's salary now. So remember, some people have Quinn bills, some people have educational incentives, so the numbers fluctuate. Sergeant, it's 16% over a patrolman. That's what it's going to be. That's not an issue. It's the captain was the variance there that we had to try to pinpoint down for you.
Yeah, I just took your largest numbers, DG.
Okay.
Whatever the most expensive person was in each category, and that's
Yep.
what I filled into there.
Thank you.
Yeah, that makes sense.
All right, I'm on mute, sorry. Okay. If there's nothing else, then thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm ready.
Enjoy the rest of the day. We'll see you soon.
Bye-bye.
Okay, then now if we would move on to the 10th item on the agenda, which is going to be Melissa Gaspa, Loretta Johnson, and I don't know if we have a trustee for Flint Public Library.
Hello, everyone. So yes,
hi.
I'm Melissa Gasper, the library director, and Loretta Johnson, the assistant director, is on the call. I think you can see her.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Loretta.
We don't have any trustees as of right now joining us.
Okay.
So I'll just give a little overview of the budget. We tried to keep it, even from last year, as much as possible. We did add a little bit in the contractual line items just because some of our expenses are going up year to year. But we also were able to balance that with taking a little out of our fuel line item because we've been finding over the last 4 or 5 years, we have not come near spending down the whole budget. And so we thought we could safely reduce that budget by about $3,000. So other than that, almost everything is about the same or a little bit lower, like our training budget, since a lot of our trainings are remote now. Everybody's finding Zoom very easy to use, traveling as much. In the salaries and wages, there was an increase in the assistant director's hours there, but that might also be discussed in the supplemental budget. So I'll hold off on that. But did anyone have any questions about the library budget?
Yeah, Melissa, I think you can go right into the supplemental and talk about the assistant director.
Okay, well, what we found is the assistant director position is a very responsible and, needs a high level of dedication, not to mention that it was only scheduled for 35 hours, which is really not enough hours for the person to do the job. Like in the past few years, I've noticed, with the shopping for supplies and just doing payroll, every other week, which I know all the departments have to handle that. But we just saw that this position did require more hours than were allotted. So I know in some other places, the town is looking into creating a salaried position for the second in command. So I would like to request, I would make that suggestion that I think that would be a very wise move for the assistant director position at the library. And so in the supplemental budget, I did put that in as a salaried position. So from the regular budget to the salaried position is only about 1,000 or about $976 more dollars than what is currently posted in the salaries and wages that you're looking at. So it wouldn't be a big increase in pay, but it would just more honestly reflect the need for, right now I can't pay overtime and I'm having hard time giving comp time for the person doing that position because of, the demands of the position. So this seemed like the most equitable, fair, and what honestly reflects the requirements of that job.
Andy, is that position, I assume is part of the pay equity study that's been done?
Yes, that's correct, Costa.
And is what's being suggested within the parameters of your findings there?
So there's actually sort of two parts to this one. One is or three parts if you want to include the conversion to a salaried position. Most or all of our department assistants are full-time now, and the assistant library director is not is not at the level in terms of hours as others. Most of them are salaried. And then in terms of the equity, the pay equity study, there is an adjustment that needs to be put in place under that as well. When we first had these discussions with Melissa, we were not sure about the status of the equity study and the implementation of that. So we encouraged her to go forward with that because we weren't sure that that we were going to be in a position to move on that, but we wanted to at least move on the hours and the conversion to a salaried position.
The reason I'm asking is, is it enough of a salary to meet the pay equity study? I support the additional hours, the salary conversion, but then are we then going to have to adjust the salary again based on the pay equity study? And if so, let's just do it right the first time.
Sure. Yeah, and where we're looking now at doing the pay equity study implementation during fiscal 21, it would sort of all work itself out if we're able to do that, and then would make the adjustments to the various department budgets during the course of before the close of 21.
Right. So, like I said, I'm all in favor of the proposal.
Did anyone else have any questions or?
How's the volume of, transactions and lendings, at the library given COVID?
Well, I would say we're still really busy and we're still very connected with our patrons. And with the allowance of Zoom, we have really good attendance at our programs. Like I was just looking before this meeting and some of the story hours have over 100 people because, they're able to tune in from their homes. And some of our postings that we have had 300 people. One of our craft programs had 300 people. Our small groups, is more like 10 or so people. But as far as the circulation of items, we are running at about 80% pre-COVID times, but I think that's still doing very well because a lot of libraries are seeing, big dips in their circulation, and we're holding steady at about 80% of what we were, before the pandemic. So, and we're hoping that, once the librarians can be vaccinated, like I've heard other departments talk about, that we will be able to open and, have return to allowing browsing. And I know that will really help our statistics as well, our numbers.
When you can return to in-person programming, I think you should also keep the programming on Zooms to increase the options of people that may not be able to get out to come to the program, but they could participate through the Zoom version.
Yes, I think that will happen with a lot of our meetings. I just, from being in meetings in the evenings, a lot of people have commented that they like that. Like on Tuesday, which ordinarily would have been, a snow day, we were still able to conduct library interviews, run a story hour program, run the writing group, and work from home. And so in a sense, the library was still providing everything that patrons needed other than walk in and pick up holds that day. But yes, this has really shown us other ways and to connect with our patrons and to keep our community engaged. And we're doing a lot of trying to, on the phone, helping people learn how to download books or move to ebooks if that's what they are interested in, or downloadable audiobooks. So it's really been, in some ways, a very positive experience. It's still difficult, and we miss seeing our patrons, face to face like we did, other than, at the Holtz pickups. But, I've been very pleased, and the staff at the library have come up with amazing, creative, it's almost like they're all running their own TV shows, story hour shows and craft shows and music programs. And so, and we have very loyal patrons that have been very complimentary about what's happening at the library. So, so to answer your question, yes, Costa, we will try to keep that going. We'll figure it out.
Thank you.
Rick, you're muted.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Loretta.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of the weekend. Okay, now we can see on deck we have Middleton Elementary School budget. Mr. Morrison, Mr. Greenberg, and Ms. Bansfield.
Hey, Rick, thank you for having us today. Steve is here as well. I think Natasha will be jumping on shortly. I'll begin and then we'll turn it over to Steve. I just want to begin with a thank you. Certainly a lot of gratitude to the partnership that we have with the town of Middleton, in the sense of we are constantly intersecting with all of the town departments in one capacity or another throughout the course of a week or a month or a school year. And certainly from my seat as superintendent, I would say a particular shout out to Andy as well, and all of his support. As we know, it's been a unique school year and for a whole lot of reasons, and just really appreciate the partnership with Andy as well. So I just wanted to start with gratitude for the relationship and work that we have with all of our town partners.
So before you continue, Scott, I think, we also need to thank you, because it has been a difficult year, and for your position dealing with 3 different towns that may have different views on how to deal with the issues created the pandemic might have been is quite a nightmare for you, but you've kept through it and you've done well, I think, with for all 3 towns. So I certainly appreciate it, and I'm sure all of us do.
Yeah, agreed.
I appreciate those kind words, Costa. It's a team effort. I'm lucky to have a great team. So thank you for that. And I'll share that message with the team. It's much appreciated. Before I throw it, go ahead, Costa. Okay. Before I throw it to Steve, I just want to introduce Natasha Bansfield. Natasha is the chair of the Middleton School Committee. So Natasha, if you want to say hello to the group here, I can throw it to you first.
Good morning. Hi, or good afternoon, I should say, actually. Nice to see everybody.
Nice to see you.
Excellent. Thanks, Natasha. And now, if it's okay with the chair, we'll head over to Steve Greenberg to give an update.
Right ahead, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good to see you all. To echo what Dr. Morrison was saying, that we're very thankful for the partnership that we have with the town, that we have a great relationship with the Board of Selectmen Finance Committee. And yeah, Andrew's all right. He's okay. But moving on. So with regard to the proposed FY22 budget for Middleton Elementary Schools, this is a level service budget. It assumes that we are back in normal operation, that all guidance is relaxed, and that we're moving forward under normal circumstances. The thing I want to emphasize in the development of this budget is that when I sat down with the department heads and the building principals, we wanted to make sure that for all, in years past, for all the effort that we put into advocating for program enhancements, moving things forward and from an educational perspective, technology, any of those things, that in this fiscal year and possibly the next fiscal year, we need to take that much effort and then some to review all of our discretionary lines and see how we can reinvest those dollars to preserve our core education services and deliver what would be a level service budget. And so I really need to commend the department heads for the school department, the building principals for that effort, as it really does show. Currently, the budget that's proposed demonstrates a 1.97% increase over approved FY21. That the budget, in the budget itself, it has a 10% increase in the insurance premium. We will see where that goes, but this is where we're starting for budget purposes. We have hopes that it will be much less than 10%. So we'll see that benefit from the overall budget itself. One of the main reasons why the budget is coming in at first draft level service at 1.97% is because of the experience that we're having with special education, that we're seeing a large drop off in special education from the tuition perspective. And that's because we have students aging out, moving on to Masco, or just leaving the district as possibly as a whole. In addition, we're also seeing the benefit of additional circuit breaker that we're carrying in the revenue side of our budget. So it's a win and twofold. But I do need to warn everybody that that's probably temporary. That with our drop off in special education costs proposed for FY22, that we'll probably see a larger decrease in our circuit breaker as they are interrelated. So just something for the Board of Selectmen and Finance Committee to keep in mind as we progress into FY23. And while we're talking about special education and that drop off, as we continue through the budget deliberations, there may be a possibility and potential opportunity to reinvest those dollars in the drop off of that savings, if you will, and continue to fund the Special Education Stabilization Fund. Again, just a potential opportunity that hopefully we'll be able to have a productive conversation with the Finance Committee and the Board of Selectmen and Town Administration to see if there's the opportunity to do that. In addition, yes, sir.
Can you identify the current year tuition and transportation costs of the students graduating from 6th grade this year?
If I may, I want to talk with Matt about that. In Costa, where I'm cautious, it's just that privacy piece, you know, and being able to identify students. But let me talk with Matt about that.
Okay, because I'm not students, I'm just like the total, just the number.
Yes. Yeah, no,
and the reason I'm asking is, I want to compare what Middleton is sort of saving as opposed to what it's picking up on the Masco budget.
Absolutely understand.
So to be able to make that comparison, I need a number. I don't need to know anything about students or where they are or anything like that.
Let me follow up.
And I think for that, Steve, is we had heard from a Masco school committee member that the bulk, if not all of the out-of-district placements that were entering Masco were coming from Middleton. And just looking at numbers here, there's a little bit of a disconnect between the numbers that we saw on the Masco budget and the numbers, or at least for me, there's a disconnect. And it would be helpful and don't want to know number, don't want to know names, just want to know raw number.
I understand.
Don't even tell us how many students. You can just tell us this is a dollar amount.
So I will work on that with Mr. LaCava to make sure we have it right, and I will communicate that back probably through Mr. Sheen. Are there any other questions before I continue on? Hearing silence, I will keep going. The final part of my statement is that for the elementary schools for FY22, we are not proposing any warrant articles for technology, curriculum, facilities. That being quite frank, we understand that there are other things going on at the town level for FY22. We're very sensitive to that, and we believe it is appropriate to take a year, if you will, to minimize our footprint, for lack of a better description, to help support the initiatives that the town will be proposing in FY22. So with that, I will stop talking and answer any questions that the Finance Committee, Board of Selectmen, or Town Administration may have.
Steve, you
Yes, sir.
mentioned you're carrying 10% for, health insurance increase.
Yes.
Masco is carrying 2.5 and expecting it to be lower than that.
Yes.
I guess, what are you seeing that's different than what Masco is seeing?
Well, it's not to put anybody on the spot, but when we develop the budget, I do work in concert with the treasurer and the town accountant. And as the town accountant is developing her budget, I ask her what she's carrying for a premium to start, a premium increase. So I'm following her perspective, and I carry 10%. I understand.
They're under our insurance. They don't have their own insurance plan. So
okay,
whatever their rate is our rate. So it always piggybacks on each other.
So I mean, because on the town side, the DPW and police and fire are more apt to have injuries and use health care for different things and maybe older there. So it's a different thing than Masco. Okay. Very
With
good.
all that being said, Costa, we've had very positive experience, I think, over the last couple of years in terms of the insurance premium increase, if I'm not mistaken, maybe even 3 years. I could be wrong, but I think we've had a really good luck and good experience for Middleton. There, I believe, are potential opportunities where this premium increase that's being proposed will be much less than what I'm carrying. But it is the starting point, and that's where we are. We're at the very start of our budget.
All right.
I will say, Costa, we did have a discussion too of taking this line item out of the school's budget and just putting it all on the town side since we pay the bills. However, the school department is now going to their own payroll provider of Harper's. So Harper's will now be taking care of all of that. So that's why, and some of the finance committee members were made aware of this at some point, that we were hoping to do this during this budget cycle. But we decided not to just because of the change of the school department going to Harper's for payroll. So we're keeping the budgets as is.
Is that change going to be a net benefit or a wash in terms of cost?
Are you asking about Harper's, Costa?
Yeah.
All right. So from my perspective, it's a wash for the elementary schools. It is a gain for the town hall, and Andrew and Sarah can correct me if I misspeak or they see it differently. But this is a huge opportunity with that we are eliminating a lot of duplication and redundancy in terms of payroll development, that it's developed at the elementary school level. We have to work it through Ivy. We have to put together a warrant for town hall, and then town hall has to rekey all that information into Munis. There has not been a successful bridging component where we're able to transmit that data directly from Ivy to Harper's. And I'm telling you that I've invested thousands, or I should say the town has invested thousands in trying to accomplish that through training and having consultant work. It just has not worked. So this was the right thing at the right time. And where the benefit for the town is that all of that effort that the town is putting into doing the school's payroll, and again, correct me if I misspeak, I'm estimating that the school is about 60% of the total town in terms of employees, that now they can reinvest that time into other things for supporting town initiatives, customer service for the town, for the community, and just a better mousetrap for the town as a whole, for lack of a better description. So it's a win for the town, and it will create efficiency on both sides as time progresses.
And the Topsfield and Boxford Elementary going to the same thing, or you have to deal with multiple systems?
Great question. We deal with 3, but Boxford has been on Harper's for years. So the reason why we went with Harper's is because Boxford, we've been working with Harper's for 8 years, and that's not just us, but the town side as well. So we're very familiar with it. That's why we went with it for Middleton. It is something that we've worked well with, and they've served us well. Topsfield still does it in-house. We're hoping to have those discussions in the future.
I will say, Costa, on the town side, this does free up a lot of time that the assistant treasurer collector spends doing payroll, checking payroll, benefits, you know, reconciling the insurance bills, things of that nature. So this will free up a lot of her time, where we're hoping to be able to cross-train her into a lot more of the HR functions that Tanya does as well, to free up some stuff off of Tanya's plate, where Cassandra can kind of step in and kind of help out doing these multi-department kind of things. So we're really looking forward to this, and I think it's gonna end up being great.
Sarah, can I just ask a question? Did you say that there's some thought of taking the insurance cost out of the school budget?
No, there was, but there isn't any longer.
Okay, because I know that happened, probably about 12, 15 years ago, and I understand why it was done. I just wanted to make sure why you were thinking about it otherwise, but that makes sense.
I mean, my rationale to do it was it alleviates a lot of work on my end, because we don't have things set up separately in Munis. So everything hits the town side anyways, and then I book journal entries every month to move things onto the school side. So this would it would have freed up a lot of my time, but now that we're moving to Harper's, and now Harper's will upload everything directly into Munis, I still alleviate all the work that I was doing, and we're still keeping everything consistent with how we have in the past.
There's still a check that happens on the town side. You're not re-inputting anything, but it's still the,
no, just making sure that everything, you know, there will be a report that gets run, and we'll just, you know, ensure that everything comes over correctly. We're going through all those processes right now, doing parallels and testing it out. Correct me if I'm wrong, Steve. I think March is still the implementation date of Harper.
Correct.
This year. So
yes, we go live March.
So it'll be really good.
Are there any questions? Any other questions?
Yes, Steve, I have one comment on the Special Education Stabilization Fund. I agree with you with the drop in the special education costs, that we have that opportunity. By my calculations, it looks like we could shift about $130,000 into the SPED Stabilization Fund based upon the history of that fund. So we should take the opportunity while it's dropped to do that, so that when it turns around and goes up again, we can use that fund to help mitigate any spikes in the tax rate.
Yeah, we use Middleton as the example, certainly for all the other two towns. I mean, the way you guys have handled it has been great, and it's I think a good model for the other two towns to look at. So I think you're right. If there's a year to do it, this would be the year.
John, my only question to you is, where would you fund that from? Use free cash to fund it, or would we increase the operating?
Yeah, so the idea is to keep the tax rate as steady as possible. So, you know, over the past 5 years, and including the estimate for the next year, we've been putting about an additional $80,000 a year into special education. So I'm proposing that, you know, we just continue that trend and take the money. Well, everything comes from taxation, of course, so it doesn't really matter where we pull it. But I would say it's coming from taxation, 130,000 going into stabilization.
Sarah's question, the money's going to come out of free cash, because it's going to be turned back over by the school committee.
Okay, just wanted to. I'm just writing my notes down, so I just want to make sure I am keeping up with the conversation. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? All right, well, thank you, Scott, Steve, and Natasha.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, this morning. And okay, well then, I guess, Andy, if you want to pick it up from here for any general discussion or reviews you want to, this is going to be it. Oh, I'm muted, right?
No, you're on.
I was.
Very good.
We could hear you and you couldn't
I
hear
would
me.
have caught you, Rick.
Sorry.
Best of all worlds. So thanks to Scott, Steve, and Natasha, and everybody else for their time this morning and this afternoon. There's still a lot of unknowns, as I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, that there were a lot of unknowns coming into the meeting. Still a lot of unknowns 4 hours later as we as we've gone through it all. I think there's not a lot of decision making to be made today in general on the operating budget. I think there is potentially some decision making on some of the supplemental requests. Obviously, with the assessors, we've got some analysis to do, some data gathering to do to do some comps with that request. There seemed to be a little bit more clarity on the assistant library director. We didn't talk about it when Melissa was on. There was a second supplemental request for the library, but they pulled that one. It was a short money, but it just didn't seem to be really necessary. So there's the assessors, the library assistant director, the public health nurse, and the police org structure, if you want to call it that. So if there's direction on any of those, decision making on any of those, or if there's additional work that you need us to do, that would be helpful today. We'll do a little bit more work on the public health nurse too, based on the conversation earlier. But if there's any decisions that can be rendered on the police and the library, then that would be helpful.
Yeah, I think we should, I'm ready to make a decision on the police point. I mean, I think we're clear that we want to do this. And, we've kicked this can for multiple years. The library assistant director, I think Costa's right in his comments on that, and that is a significantly small increase, $976.
Mm-hmm.
The other question I have is, and I don't know if this is now or at our later discussion, as what is the thinking and the rationale around the pay equity study that's happened? Is there going to be some potential effect in this year budget, or are you asking for a salary reserve line that may happen later on in the fiscal year, or is this something that we're going to try to start addressing the following fiscal year? And I surely do not think this is something we can do all in one year, but I appreciate at least that the studies happen and we have some clarity now.
Yeah. So the way that we'd like to approach it is to present to the board the classification plan. So so positions will be classified, like positions will be classified together. Your fire and police chiefs will be in a grade together. Other similar positions would be in grades of their own. We'd like to get that in place in the next several weeks. And then we would suggest that we go ahead and slot the individuals into those within those grades, within those grade levels. And we'd like to do that in the current fiscal year. That will not require any additional appropriations or anything like that. We do have a compensation reserve that we would use to make those changes. It will have a ripple effect on 22, and so we would make adjustments to the departmental budgets on the basis of the implementation, and make adjustments to the fiscal 22 budget based on the changes that we would implement during fiscal 21. The result won't have any net effect on the budget for 22. We're carrying a comp reserve for 22 that'll simply get reduced by the amount of the changes that we implement.
Thank you.
Thanks. Well, in regards to, So we're gonna need a vote for the library and the police, so I don't know, obviously I'm not gonna vote on the police.
Yeah, if the board and the finance committee are ready to act on those, that would be great to get them out of the way.
So
I'll move to approve the police and library supplemental requests.
second.
That's it. All right, we have a motion and a second. I obviously will abstain.
This will be a joint vote with the finance committee.
Okay.
Correct. Yep.
Okay, and so we actually have to call a roll because we are on Zoom. So I guess I'll call the roll. Costa?
Yes.
Rick's abstaining. Myself, yes. Let's look at, let me see, Costa, myself. I'm just looking at our list who's here. So Rich Gregorio?
Yes.
Michelle Cresta?
Yes.
George Dow?
You muted, George.
Yeah, you muted, George. You can give us a thumbs up if you want. You're still muted. Or a thumbs down. Okay, that looked like an up. John Erickson?
Yes.
Yes.
Jason Vining?
Yes.
John Mahoney?
Yes.
Tony Mertz?
Yes.
And I think that's everybody that's in attendance. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. Well, that passed unanimously.
Thank you, Brian.
And the gavel back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Okay, and then the item would be the addition to the Flint Public Library. A motion, please.
We had a joint motion on that, did we?
I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah,
good motion
yeah,
and a
Costa
second.
moved
All right.
both, so.
All right,
And
then
then
I
we'll-
will, yep.
And then we'll do some additional digging into the assessor's request in terms of
Right.
staff analysis, as well as the
public health nurse. Yep. Okay, very good. All right, then,
So, Andy, if you want, we can discuss exactly what I was getting at with that analysis, in a phone call before you get started, so you don't, end up, doing something that I'm not aiming at.
Okay, that would be helpful.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Sarah
Good.
or Andy, do we have a copy of the presentation? I'm not sure if it's in the multiple files we have, but the presentation that Masco gave.
Yep, it's at the end of, oh, I don't have that version. That I have the one from January 20th. The one that they gave is from February 3rd. But I should be able to get it off the website.
Yeah, I'm just, what I'm hoping to either get from that, or if you have line of sight to it, Sarah, how much of their proposed, as they stand now, budget is sped out of district increase and sped transportation increase?
Let me just scroll
The
down.
issue that we talked about during that, I'm trying to figure out what those raw numbers are.
Yep, give me one
No,
second.
it's 174,000.
Is the increase at Masco?
That's the net increase. But without those 10 students moving from 6th grade, it would have been a big decrease.
And that is both tuition and transportation?
Yeah, that 174 number combines both.
Okay.
Because, there were, other outplacements and other in placements, and there is a slide that was presented by Patty Buller that gives you the pluses and the minuses of that, but the net result is 174.
Well, they're showing. Wait a minute.
Well, maybe the 174 didn't include the transportation, but
yeah, transportation is 413, 850 is an increase.
Yeah. Yeah, that was my point. Okay. 174 is just tuition, and then transportation is 413.
Yep. I don't think those numbers changed too much, Brian, from the other presentation. I think the only change from the that he presented today was on the revenue side.
No, that's right, because I remembered it was a total of about 550-ish, if I remembered at the time.
Circled on
Yeah.
that version, but yep.
Okay.
And this is in the budget summary. This is page 171 on the PDF of the
Got it.
FY2022 budget summary.
Okay, thank you, Sarah.
You're welcome.
And thank you, Andy and Tanya, for all your work getting us to this point. This was a behemoth, and I'll say, Sarah, I wasn't a big fan of ClearGov last year. I like it a little bit more.
Well, now we're using it to its full extent this year.
Yep.
I mean, literally all the information is in ClearGov now, all the attachments, all the descriptions, all the detail information. So it made our lives a whole lot easier for the most part. Some departments still really clung on to their detail spreadsheets that we've done in the past versus utilizing the software to its fullest extent. But you know, it'll take a couple more go arounds to get everybody on track with it. But I really do like the software, and especially because this year they did a big change on their reports. So it's a lot more user friendly than it was last year. So a lot of the numbers I pulled into the budget summary came directly from ClearGov. I didn't have to really do too much manipulating of the data, which was nice.
Good, and I don't miss my binders at all.
And Sarah?
Yes.
I think, part of the issue, the issue I had with, getting to those reports is, your email, they had a link to it. When I signed in.
That email is from ClearGov. I did not send out that email. ClearGov generates that itself.
Oh, well, it came from you, was the email.
Your email.
Okay.
And that link didn't get me, it got me to seeing something that you weren't seeing. When I went to sign it to cleargov.com, just that without the link, then I was able to get to what you were showing.
Well, the link that I sent in the email was just a tutorial on how to use ClearGov.
Oh, okay. Well,
the email from ClearGov itself would have brought you to the budget. Sorry. So next year I'll clarify it a little bit better.
Okay.
But yeah, once you get into it, and you can get into it, I know Rich had his own issues today too, Rich Gregorio. So hopefully going forward, it'll be a lot smoother. I'm not changing anybody's usernames, passwords, anything on my end. So hopefully, every time you need to go in, you'll be able to use the same login info. I can, of course, reset everybody's passwords too. So if anybody forgets their password, I can reset it for you. And then I will promptly forget what your password is because I have too much to deal with. So.
And we miss seeing your daughter this budget session.
Well, she's apparently having the best day ever at home. So.
There you go.
Okay. All right. So we still have a motion and a second on the increase for the library.
No, we passed it. It passed.
It did. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Terribly sorry.
Yeah, we did it jointly with the police.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
And even though you didn't vote on the library, we know you support the library.
I do support the library.
We do. We know that, Rick. We do that. We know that, Rick.
anything good for Middleton, I support. All right.
So, Mr. Chairman, if there's nothing else, I move that we adjourn.
Okay. Then thanks, everyone. Like you said, getting it done. Big job. And hopefully we get, a little clearer vision and brighter days ahead. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, folks.